And we are live. Welcome in, everybody, to a very special Tier Maker Rankings video. Today we're going to be going into the NFL front offices. I hope you guys had a great Christmas vacation or otherwise, whatever it is you celebrate this time of year. But this is always a fun one and a heavily requested video, and I wanted to loop you guys in on it in the comments and everything because I started writing my notes for how I wanted to break down all these different front offices, and I was like, man, there are a lot of little moves that I could easily forget, and I figured what better video to include you guys in to kind of chime in, oh, don't forget my team included a 4th round pick in that trade, or we passed on this player when we took that guy. There's so many little things that happen that you observe as a fan that when you're putting together a whole list like this, it can be tough to remember some of those things. So I'm not going to say I'm counting on you guys in the chat, but I'm certainly looking forward to whatever little tidbits you guys are able to bring to the table here that we can add to the picture and make this the best Tier Maker rankings list of NFL front offices that we can. So let's go ahead and get into it here. Let me switch this over. So as far as the tiers go, we have elite at the top. We got A, B, C, D, and F. Very straightforward. And then we have, the newer front offices that we want to be a little more fair to. So we have too early to tell / NA, which honestly right now we can just drop the Dolphins in there right now and save a little bit of time because they fired Chris Greer, rightfully so, who's done a horrible job there for a long time. I've been calling for that for a long time. So we can actually knock that out right now as a NA because we got to see who they hire and which direction they're going to go there. And then we do have the early returns looking promising, which might be a newer front office that's kind of killing it so far. So we'll see who those might be. But let's have some fun here today. We're just going to go in the order that the website feeds us here, starting with the LA Rams. And I just want to make sure I get my notes ready to go here. So the Rams have an excellent front office with Les Snead, and he's been there since 2012, so he's gone through multiple eras with the Rams, and it wasn't the best start, but I think they've really established themselves as one of the premium front offices in the NFL, transitioning from that kind of F them picks mentality, which was they showed one way that they can build the team, trading first-round picks for Matthew Stafford, Jalen Ramsey. They traded for Von Miller. And then recently, they've kind of shifted to this team that just loads up on draft picks and finds value down the board. They've had so many incredible draft steals. So part of what we're going to do here, when it's necessary, is look at the team's draft history, because that's just part of the fun of doing a video like this. So, I mean, the last 3 drafts for the Rams, 4 drafts, have just been insane values. And it wasn't perfect back in, it could probably go back to like 2019, even 2018 when they didn't have those draft picks that they were trading away. You look at top of the board, Joseph Noteboom, Brian Allen in 2018, not great. Taylor Rapp and Darrell Henderson in 2019, Cam Akers, Van Jefferson, Terrell Lewis, Terrell Burgess. They had a rough stretch there, even up to Tutu Atwell in the 2nd round. But, man, I think we're going to weigh recency over drafts that were a half decade ago. And when you look at 2022, they didn't have a 1st or a 2nd round pick, but they found key contributors. Kobe Durant still making plays for that defense. Kyron Williams, Quentin Lake, super underrated nickel. You go to 2023, so many draft picks. Obviously, finding Puka Nacua in the 5th round is the biggest of which, but Byron Young has been awesome this year. Steve Avila is a starting guard. Kobe Turner is a top 15 defensive tackle in the league. Then you go back to last year, Jared Verse, getting him outside the top 10. You get a premium number 1 edge rusher outside the top 10. That's a great draft pick. I was even critical of them trading up for Braden Fisk, and He hasn't made quite as much noise this year as he did in his rookie year, but if nothing else, that's not a bad move to go get Braden Fisk, especially with how well he fits and rounds out that defense. Cam Kinchins has been good. Blake Corum's been fantastic. Jordan Whittington's a contributor. And then you go to this recent draft, they trade down. And again, this is the new Rams. They load up on draft picks. They trade down, get the Falcons' first-round pick this year, kind of betting against their old defensive coordinator and Raheem Morris there. And Terrence Ferguson, another pick that I thought was early. I mean, this has been a team that I've actually gone against some of their draft picks when I've analyzed these drafts, and they nailed that. Well, I can't say they nailed it, but Terrence Ferguson looks very promising. He's put on weight already in a good way. Josiah Stewart, not quite as many slam dunks so far out this. But anyway, they have drafted incredibly well. You also have to look at the Devontae Adams signing. I think we have to put them in elite. I do. I mean, what is the real criticism of the Rams front office in the last 4 years? It's really hard to find that. I mean, maybe signing Jonah Jackson is like the worst thing they've done in the last 4 years. It's just incredible what they've done. So I don't know if we're going to spend that long on everybody, but the Rams definitely deserve their praise. So let's go to the Cleveland Browns. This is a little bit more of a heavier conversation. Andrew Berry was hired in 2020, and this is one of the harder ones to analyze because of the Deshaun Watson trade and how much do you put that on the current front office. And I do try to factor in ownership as well when it consistently meddles with decisions. So we do know that the Browns ownership is going to get in the way of their operations. They do it consistently and have consistently done it for 20 years. I think it's a big reason this team has their failures. So I think the ownership meddling basically caps the Browns as a B. I do. Now, are they lower than that? Let's look at their draft history to begin with, because I actually think Andrew Berry has done some good stuff. Just got to pull it up here. And it's tough for them too, because they haven't had a lot of first round picks because of the Watson trade. So Andrew Berry takes over in 2020. Their first draft, Jedrick Wills, 10th overall. Now, they did take him over Tristan Wirfs. So that's a big issue there. Grant Delpit, though, nice player. Donovan Peoples-Jones showed some promise for a little bit. It's really just Grant Delpit in the second round out of that draft. So nothing crazy. Probably more of a poor draft than a good one. But I think 2021 was a good draft where you get Greg Newsome in the first round. Though, that's another sticky one because he was really good early. He struggled the last couple of years, and then they just flipped him for Tyson Campbell, who's playing well for them. Overall, though, not a bad pick for the 26th pick in the draft. JOK, very good player, did come with injury concerns. It's why he was there in the 52nd pick in the draft. Down the board, Tommy Togiai is a nice player on the Texans. So maybe I'm talking myself out of that draft not being as good as I remember. Then you have this run of not having a first-round pick for 3 years. So they did find Martin Emerson in the third round. Similarly, started strong. Really bad year last year and then got hurt this year, but Alex Wright's a contributor. David Bell was a really bad pick in the third round. Perrion Winfrey in the fourth round and a kicker in the fourth round. Maybe not quite as good as... that's why we're doing this exercise. Maybe not quite as good as I remember. 2023, they do find Cedric Tillman in the third round. Isaiah McGuire's a nice contributor for them. 2024... nothing too much to write home about. However, this year, the draft has been fantastic. They move down, get Mason Graham, you get Carson Schwessinger, Quinshon Judkins, Harold Fannin, and then the quarterback situation, which, Shedeur certainly had his ups and downs. There's so many different circles, in conversation with the Browns here, because what they did with these quarterbacks didn't really make any sense at the time. Why would you take two of these guys here? If you actually liked Shedeur, just take him in the third round. But then they end up getting him in the fifth round. And then there's all the questions of, was it ownership kind of phoning in? Like, hey, you better take him or we're going to fire you. Weird draft when it comes to the quarterbacks. But at the end of the day, Shedeur in the fifth round is a good value. So anyway, I'm glad we did spend some time in that and opened it up, because I do think these drafts are a lot worse than I've probably given them credit for. They have had some good free agency moves. They went and got Zadarius Smith and made that 2023 Browns defense really good. This year, the Malik Collins edition was really good. They also made a big move going to get Jerry Jeudy and giving him money, and he's been arguably the worst starting wide receiver in the league. Man, I've defended this Browns front office for a while. I think I'm going to put him at a D. Looking back at this, the recent draft keeps them out of F, but it's been rough, man. It has been really rough, unless I'm forgetting some good moves in there that I am not mentioning here. I mean, they went and traded for Amari Cooper a few years ago. That was pretty nice. They've also kind of let this offensive line deteriorate and really missed on any, additions that they've tried to make. So I go between C and D. I do still like Andrew Berry. I don't think I would fire him. But I think there's just too much bad in there to look back at, signing Zadarius Smith and Amari Cooper in 2023 and, give them too much credit for that. Dylan says Berry is a cap wizard. That's a great point. The way they've managed this cap is really impressive, continuously adding to it every offseason. They're tough. They're tough. Chat's torn as well between C and D. I'm going to keep it a D for now. And maybe as we start to plug in some other teams, we decide to bump them back up. But let's go ahead to the Atlanta Falcons, who I am not a fan of at all. Terry Fontenot took over in 2021. And it's kind of been a disaster, man. They have one saving grace that I wrote down, and that is the Jesse Bates free agent steal. Them getting Jesse Bates from Cincinnati was incredible value. $16 million a year for a guy that's been the best safety in the league since he signed in Atlanta and was before then. Other than that, though, we can pull up their draft history. That's where it begins with them. And I wish Football Reference let me just switch between teams here. I got to type it in every time, but so 2021 he takes over, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see this a little better. But they take Kyle Pitts 4th overall over Jamar Chase, by the way. Richie Grant 40th overall, not a good pick, and I want to say they could have had Javon Holland. I might be wrong about that. Chat can let me know. But Richie Grant's been horrible. Jalen Mayfield was unwatchable. They did get Drew Dahlman, but then they let him go. Taquan Graham's a nice player for a depth piece. But, man, Kyle Pitts has shown some flashes here 4 years later. It was going to be tough for that level player to be a bust, but you also could have had either Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase. That was not a good draft pick. So that draft stinks. 2022, I'll give them credit for taking Drake London. I don't think that was an obvious decision, and he's been phenomenal. But then Arnold Ebiketie, 38. Troy Anderson, unfortunately, hasn't been healthy, but he's been pretty good when he's played. This is actually a pick I want to talk about. Desmond Ridder in the 3rd round. And by the way, the chat is confirming Richie Grant was taken before Javon Holland. Very bad pick. Was my number one safety that year. But I flamed the Falcons at the time for the Desmond Ridder pick because it made no sense for their timeline. Because they had, I think was it Mariota? I think it was Mariota. But basically, you knew what was going to happen with Desmond Ridder because he was kind of this like high floor, viewed as this high floor QB prospect. You knew he probably wasn't going to start out the gate. He was probably going to come in and play in the second half of the year and play well enough that you were going to talk yourself into another year of Desmond Ridder. And it just the second they spent a third round pick on him, I was like, this is the biggest freaking waste of time. Take that third round pick and invest it in the O-line, the D-line, anywhere else, or take a swing at like Malik Willis or even like Matt Corral in that draft. Guys that had theoretical upside that were either gonna show exciting flashes with legitimate talent or just flame out and be nothing, which obviously would have happened with Matt Corral. I'd rather they have done that, honestly, from a process perspective than take Desmond Ridder, who had no upside whatsoever. So I hated that pick, and that aged horribly. They also spent another third-round pick on D'Angelo Malone. They did get Tyler Algier. They let John Fitzpatrick out of the building. He unfortunately just got hurt for Green Bay, but he's a good blocking tight end. We're not done. 2023, okay draft. I think you do the Bijan pick and the Matthew Bergeron pick all over again. Those guys have been, pretty solid. Even Zach Harrison in the third round. Nothing wrong with that draft. 2024, the whole Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix thing, we probably don't even need to spend any time on it. Complete unmitigated disaster from the very beginning. Ruka Rororo, they traded up for him. Horrible, horrible pick. Braylon Trice in the third round hasn't done anything. Brandon Dorlus has had some unblocked sacks this year in their scheme. I mean, this draft is a complete waste of everything. I mean, what are you getting out of this draft other than a maybe year from Michael Penix next year? And maybe Michael Penix works out, but it sure as hell doesn't feel like that. You took a 24-year-old low upside QB, 8th overall, who has injury concerns, and he gets hurt in his second year. Now, this year, I actually don't hate what they've done this year. I think they get a little credit back this year. Obviously, you don't want to trade your first-round pick away if it's going to be a high draft pick. They've won some games as of late, so it doesn't feel like it's going to be a top 10 pick to the Rams. James Pierce has been phenomenal. Jalen Walker has been good. He was never going to be a like amazing pass rusher out the gate with what his profile was, but he hasn't felt like he's going to be trending towards being a bust. This is a good pass rush duo, and they quietly got Xavier Watts out of that trade down. So they get a little bit of credit back for this recent draft. But is it enough to overwrite? Is this draft and signing Jesse Bates 3 years ago enough to keep them out of the F tier? I don't think so. I think the Falcons have a strong case to be the worst front office in the NFL today. And I'm curious what chat thinks about that one. All right. Let's go to the Chargers. Relatively new front office here. Joe Ortiz takes over in 2024. This one's a little bit more of a shorter conversation, I think. We can look at their draft history. They've been, relatively quiet in free agency. They haven't had a ton of cap space. Los Angeles Chargers. Hold on. I spelled loss wrong, but you get the point. It's annoying that I can't just pivot between teams on the Pro Football Reference page there. But anyway, the Chargers have they haven't had a ton of cap space. They have made a pretty nice list of like value free agent additions. They added last year, especially Elijah Molden in a trade, Tyre Tart, Poona Ford, Christian Fulton, who they did let go, but he played well for a year, J.K. Dobbins. They've kind of gone down that to like B and C list free agents and not like gone too crazy in terms of splash moves. And then in the draft, they've just kind of nailed it. Like, they have drafted really well under Joe Ortiz. Joe Alt was a great pick, obviously, especially when you piggyback it with Lad McConkey. It was the Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase meme for the Chargers last year. Do you go Joe Alt? Do you go Malik Neighbors? And if you're going to take, if you're not going to get the wide receiver, you get the rare tackle who looks like a perennial all-pro talent for years to come. you get Ladd McConkey in the second round. Like, you can't do any better than that. That is quickly set them up for this transition. So, like, that's incredible. Junior Colson hasn't been what you expected, and that's definitely a bummer considering they were so close to him with Jesse Minter at Michigan. He just hasn't really had it. But further down the board, I mean, Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart are incredible fifth-round corners. Kamani Vidal was just such a steal in the sixth round. I wish that they were a little bit more aware of how talented he was, because they did everything in their power to not let Kamani Vidal play, whether it was J.K. Dobbins ahead of him last year or this year signing Najee Harris, drafting a Marion Hampton first. I think if they had a little bit more awareness with that pick, you probably could have gone with more of a valuable position over a Marion Hampton, but Hampton looks really good, so it's hard to be overly critical about that. Trey Harris has made some really good catches. Jamari Caldwell's played well. Kennard, I haven't noticed as much for them, but man, Lambert Smith looks like he can be a good wide receiver depth piece. Aronde Gadsden, RJ Mickens, they have been one of the best, if not the best, drafting teams the last 2 years since Ortiz took over. So that's really impressive. Free agency has, as Coaster Hour just said in the chat, been underwhelming, but they haven't really been swimming in cap space either. The previous regime didn't set them up with a ton of flexibility there. They still have a lot to prove, I think, but it's hard to argue with that draft history, man. And it's not like they've made any free agent moves that were like bad, really. I mean, Mekhi Becton was questionable with his injury record, but I think I got to go A tier for the Chargers with that draft history. I really trust that front office right now. All right, 49ers. This is another really polarizing one. There's not a more polarizing front office in the league than the Niners, because when they hit, they freaking hit, man. You're talking about a franchise quarterback as Mr. Irrelevant. You're talking about, one of the best linebackers of all time in the third round in Fred Warner. You're talking about George Kittle, one of the best tight ends of all time in the fifth round. When they hit, it is unbelievable. And I got you, Will. I will check super chats. I'm going to do like a super chat break in between some of these teams, but I do appreciate you. I saw it earlier. I haven't forgotten, but man, when the Niners miss, they miss as bad as anybody. Oh, and by the way, it's not just the draft picks. Some of the trades the Niners have made. John Lynch, by the way, took over with Shanahan in 2017. They traded for Trent Williams in 2020, traded a third-round pick for someone that we didn't know what his long-term availability was going to be into his 30s there, coming out of Washington. And he's been the best lineman in football. He's been a top 5 player in football from the moment the Niners traded for him. I don't think that's crazy to say. So, like, the Trent Williams trade was just incredible. They go get Christian McCaffrey for a cluster of mid-round picks. I even like the Bryce Huff trade they made this year. But, like, dude, when the Niners go wrong, we can pull up their draft history as well. But it's not just the draft history. It's, betting that you can replace DeForest Buckner, for example, and drafting Javon Kinlaw with the pick you got for DeForest Buckner. The Brandon Ayuk contract has been a total lack of foresight. Now, I don't know how much I can blame them for him just going full Antonio Brown, which is kind of what it looks like. But it definitely was a contract situation that got drawn out, and you probably have some regrets there for sure. But man, the 49ers draft are all over the damn place. I will say this. I think what I'm about to say matters. I don't know that there's a team in the league that I trust less with my draft picks right now than the 49ers, because they are one of these teams that just kind of beats to their own drum. And when they miss, it is so brutal, man. And you got to go back to their first couple drafts were pretty damn nice, obviously. Getting guys like, they built the foundations of this run in the first couple drafts they had. Right. Like Fred Warner's in there. You've got, actually, John okay, John Lynch did draft George Kittle. That was one of his first draft picks. But you get, Bosa and Debo and Ayuk for a while was a foundational piece, but Greenlaw in the 5th round. But geez, man, you start in 2021, you take Trey Lance using 3 first-round picks for that. Aaron Banks, I thought was overdrafted at the time and continues to be just ridiculously overpaid by another polarizing front office in Wisconsin. Trey Sermon, Ambry Thomas, Diamador Lenore in the 5th round, going to be one of the better draft picks we talk about. Talanoa Hufanga was a good draft pick for them. So they got a couple of DBs there in the 5th round, but still not a good draft. 2022 was just, there's nothing here other than Brock Purdy. This is why it's so polarizing. They waste a 3rd-round pick on Tyrion Davis-Price out of nowhere. Danny Gray. Spencer Burford's been bad. Drake Jackson has been nowhere to be found. And then, you get your franchise quarterback in the 7th round. 2023, this is the very memorable, horrible draft. This is Jair Brown, Jake Moody, and Cam Latu in the 3rd round. All those picks were bad at the time. And then other than that, D. Winters has shown some promise. That was the one pick I think I liked out of that draft, and that's aged well. Then 2024, much better. Like last year was kind of a saving grace for this front office. Ricky Pearsall, unfortunately, just can't stay healthy, but Renardo Green, Malik Mustafa, Garendo looked promising for a little bit, but Dominique Pooney's been looking like a future starting guard for them. Tatum Bethune's been making some plays for that defense. And then you get to this year, and it doesn't look super promising. Mykel Williams, Niners fans will continue to defend to death. I wouldn't have spent the 11th pick on him. He obviously got hurt. That's not great. Alfred Collins has been, I think, what you expected, like a high-floor DT. Nick Martin in the 3rd round. These 3rd-round picks that they make, it's just so confusing. Nobody thought Nick Martin belonged in that range. They've had countless opportunities open up at linebacker, and he can't get on the field. Upton Stout, he was such a low ceiling player to me as like an undersized 5'8" DB. He's fun to watch, but I don't know if he's good. CJ West, I think can be a good D tackle for them, but God, their drafts are just like really hard to look at times. So, what do you do with the frickin' Niners, man? I think it's kind of poetic beauty to just punt him down the fairway and call him a C. Because they have this ability to like find frickin' superstars out of nowhere. But like I said, I don't know that there's a GM combined with Shanahan that I trust less to make a draft pick than the Niners, and that's just tough. So I think I go C there for them. All right, before we go to our next team, I do have a sponsor for this stream today, Underdog Fantasy. So I want to thank Underdog for sponsoring today's stream / tier maker rankings. So if you guys are a fantasy football nut who's sad that their fantasy football season is coming to an end, either this weekend if you're in the championship game, or if you fell short of the playoffs, or if you're like me and you suffered a bunch of injuries and your fantasy season ended months ago, well, Underdog Fantasy's got you covered because their pick'em contests are the best way to play some fantasy football, win some money, enjoy these football games. It was clutch yesterday for that Christmas slate, I will say that. I have a lineup for tomorrow that I wanted to share for the Texans-Chargers game at 3 o'clock. So Ladd McConkey and Nico Collins, I think, go off. I think Ladd, in that matchup against the Texans, get the ball out quick against this pass rush, which I'm also leaning into here. I think Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson, they're going to be squeezing that pocket. I think they're both going to have an opportunity. I like that it's at a half sack for each of these guys too, because I could see them, splitting a sack, and then you're at least going to go even on that. And then Nico Collins. I think the Texans have kind of remembered how to use him with those deep digs and all that is so effective in that offense. And I think against a zone-heavy Chargers defense, there's going to be those opportunities. So that's the lineup for tomorrow. That right there is over 8 times payout, which is really good. They've also got countless profit boost tokens and stuff on Underdog too. And just a quick shout out too for playoff best ball is another really fun way to scratch that itch for a draft and test your NFL knowledge. You do your drafts, but you have to draft based on who you think advances in the playoffs as well. The further you go, the more you win. So you want to take the players on the teams that you think go further. It's a really fun way to play fantasy football. So a lot of good stuff there on Underdog. If you are signing up down the stretch here, it is code TFG. They will give you a bonus match up to $75. And thank you to Underdog for sponsoring today's stream. But let's get back to the action here. Maybe a quick sip of Gatorade to relieve the voice. All right. So, next up, we got the Pounders. My Carolina Panthers. Shout out Trevor Sikkema. I was engaging with him on Twitter, and he was pointing out that someone in the NFL Stock Exchange community has coined them the Pounders, which I lived in Charlotte for 6 months. Didn't hear it once. Went to 4 Panthers games, believe it or not, in 2024. Never heard it, but I'm all in on the Pounders. Now, actually, before I do that, super chat time from Will. Don't want to forget Will here. Will says, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Will. One suggestion, move too early to tell /NA to the bottom to clean up the tier list and pay homage to Chris Greer. I like it. I like it. It looks a lot better that way. Leaning on the chat to make this the best looking list we can make. All right. Carolina Panthers. You have Dan Morgan and friend of the channel, Eric Eager, is part of their front office as well. So shout out Eric Eager. He's been on here for a couple mock drafts in years past. But yeah, they've done a really good job in Carolina, man. I think if you're a Panthers fan and you don't trust this front office right now, you're wrong. Straight up. Like, they inherited a mess with a broken offense, a very poor defense, and, you know, a lack of overall capital after the Bryce Young investment. And what they've done, like, they didn't have a first round pick in their first year. What they've done to get this team within just a couple of years, I mean, they're going to be sniffing the playoffs in that NFC slouch this year. But, I mean, they come in right away, and I actually loved what they did with Brian Burns. I do. I know they're sitting here today, and they still want some pass rush help, but that completely opened up. It didn't just give them a second-round pick that unfortunately went to waste on Jonathan Brooks, really to no fault of the Carolina Panthers. You know, they've made up for it with finding Chuba Hubbard for nothing in free agency, and Rico Dowdle in free agency, and Chuba Hubbard stepped up and kind of bailed them from an unfortunate injury to Jonathan Brooks. But they basically traded Brian Burns for Jonathan Brooks. That's a tough pill to swallow, but I think from a process standpoint, the cap space that they freed up by not giving Brian Burns $30 million allowed them to go out in free agency and fix the offensive line, because they gave almost exactly that amount of money to Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis, who have been slam dunk signings. A lot of teams go out and pay guards what the Panthers paid those two guys, and they don't play up to the level that Hunt and Lewis have played at. Robert Hunt was a top 10 guard last year. He's missed this year for injury, unfortunately, and Damian Lewis had the best year of his career last year and the best year of his career this year. He's only gotten better in Carolina. So if you look at that trade as you're trading Brian Burns for Damian Lewis, Robert Hunt, and a second-round pick, then it makes a lot more sense, because they weren't swimming in cap space when this front office took over. So that was the biggest thing they did, and that's been a slam dunk. They've also had a bunch of value adds to this team. They went and traded, I think, a 7th-round pick for Mike Jackson, who's been a really good number 2 corner for them. Rico Dowdle, like I mentioned. Christian Roseboom has been a good addition to that room. I think a underrated move was keeping A'Shawn Robinson on the roster that everybody assumed would get cut, but they kind of stood by him. The one thing they did do that's kind of a split is they got Jadeveon Clowney last year on the cheap. I don't know why they let Clowney go for no reason this year. That one is like maybe the worst thing they've done, in my opinion, is just cutting Jadeveon Clowney for no reason because they could really use him right now. So that one's a bit of a head scratcher. But you look at their draft history, that's ultimately what's going to place the Panthers here. I gotta find it. And it's just the last 2 years. Also great shout out by Colin. They got a 4th round pick for Jonathan Mingo, and they got like a 4th round pick worth of value for Adam Thielen. Like those were also great value additions. So last year's draft wasn't perfect. It really wasn't. Xavier Legette, pick 32, not looking great. It's really not. He's been a complete roller coaster. I hope he can figure things out. Jonathan Brooks, I think the process was reasonable there. It's just unfortunately the knee just has been so bad. And by the way, I'm still very fascinated by Jonathan Brooks. He's only 23 years old. He's had a full year to recover. Rico Dowdle is a pending free agent. It's not. This is why I've changed up the schedule to wait 3 years to review drafts on this channel now. There's a chance Jonathan Brooks gives them something or they're able to get something for him in a trade. Trevin Wallace has actually been a pretty good 3rd round pick in my opinion. He's going to miss the rest of this year, unfortunately, but he sucked initially, but he was supposed to suck. That was the eval on Trevin Wallace. He was a 3rd round linebacker worth taking a look at and developing. And I think he's got a future here. Jatavion Sanders in the 4th round as a piece of that tight end room is really nice. Charles Smith-Wade has been a player in the slot for them. So they got some pieces out of this draft, even if it started rough. And then this year's been just an absolutely incredible draft, man. To get T-Mac at 8, it fell into their laps. They got a little lucky, but a lot of people thought this was going to be Jalen Walker all the way, that they were going to go defense. In all my mock drafts, I was like, no. For me, a lot of the times it was taking Luther Burden in the top 10, but I didn't know T-Mac was going to be there at 8, so that was incredible. And then to trade up and get Nick Scorton, I mean, you guys saw me on draft day. I was just so excited about that. There was a lot of like late 1st round teams that I was critical of for not taking Nick Scorton, and he's been a godsend for that defense. Uman Milan, I think, can be a pass rush specialist for them in the 3rd round. Trevor Etienne doesn't get to play much, but I think he's shown some juice. Lathan Ransom has been better than I thought as a 4th round player. I still think you can upgrade there, honestly, long term, but he's gotten on the field and made some plays. And then Mitchell Evans, Jimmy Horn, 5th, 6th round. Well, we haven't gotten to see too much Cam Jackson, but I like that as a value too, as a big-bodied run stuffer. So this draft's been awesome. I don't think the Panthers have done quite enough to be A, but they are definitely B. I think that first draft is rough enough. And again, I am pretty critical of them for letting Jadeveon Clowney go for no reason. So I'm going to put him in B, but I do think you trust that front office quite a bit. All right, Seattle Seahawks. John Schneider, my boy. Go Tommies. University of St. Thomas, grad. He's been here since 2010, and he's done just a few things. Built this defense called the Legion of Boom. You ever heard of him? Pretty damn good start for John Schneider. Now, he had Pete Carroll with him at that time, but he has, after a rough run there, 2016 to 2019, some really bad drafts. I think Pete Carroll was drinking the Kool-Aid a little too much. He got like the LJ Collier pick in there. Jordan Brooks was, he was kind of like the Quay Walker pick for the Packers. It's like he'll probably turn into a decent player eventually, but you're overdrafting a linebacker. They ended up letting him go, obviously, so that wasn't a very good pick for Seattle. You got the Jamal Adams trade in there. So there were some rough days with John Schneider, but what he's done from 2021 and beyond, it's special, man. The drafts they've had, I mean, John Schneider has had, I'm going to pull this up. He has had, I think I would say the best, how do I word this? The best duo of draft runs that any general manager has had in the 21st century. So what I'm trying to say is like windows of just restoring your team within a couple of drafts. He's done it twice because they did it with the Legion of Boom back when they took, Russell Wilson, Bobby Wagner, Richard Sherman, that whole run was just insane drafting. That was a legacy run of building through the draft. But then you go to 2021, or really 2022 rather, because the rough years continued into like D. Eskridge in the second round. Stone Forsythe still starting in the NFL somehow. But really just resetting in 2022. I mean, you can't really draft any better than this. Charles Cross, franchise left tackle. Boye Mafe. Look, I'm not the biggest fan of Boye Mafe, but once you get outside of the top 20 picks of the draft, it's hard to find like starting caliber edge rushers. And Boye Mafe is that. I think he's a 2B on a D line, but that's still good at the 40th pick. Kenneth Walker's amazing. Abraham Lucas in the third round, franchise right tackle there is insane. Kobe Bryant has turned into a starting safety for them. Reek Woolen is a quality corner, despite, getting put in the Hall of Fame after a bunch of picks in his first year. But he's still a quality player. I mean, you've even got down the board, Derek Young is a big special teams contributor for them in the 7th round. Then you go, oh my God, Devon Witherspoon, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. I mean, it speaks for itself. Derek Hall, again, just like I said, hard to find starting caliber edge rushers outside the first round. They did it again, back-to-back years with Derek Hall, Charbonnet, end of the second round. Totally fine with that. Killed it. Then you get Byron Murphy. And the rest of this draft has been pretty mid. My guy Tyrese Knight's kind of been benched this year. Tough to see, but I mean, Byron Murphy, if he is the player I see him playing like this year, and he's a Pro Bowl caliber D tackle, the rest of the draft doesn't matter as much, especially when you don't have a second round pick, which they traded for Leonard Williams, by the way. So you're filling in Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy out of that draft. That works for me. And then this year is insane again. Gray Zabel, Nicky Manwari. Arroyo, we'll see. I still have my hesitations on Arroyo, but he looks pretty good. Milroe was worth it because they didn't necessarily know. Oh yeah, AJ Barner. Holy crap. Thank you, chat. That's a ridiculous oversight by me, but that's why I wanted to do this with the chat, because there's so much information in this stream. It's good to have you guys catch that. Yeah, AJ Barner. Excellent pick in the 4th round. Love AJ Barner. Yeah, Milroe was worth the risk. He's not going to be the quarterback for the Seahawks. I think you either flip him for a pick at some point if he shows something, or I still think Jalen Milroe, I mean, I've said it so many times at this point, I might as well repeat it. I think he could be a all-pro caliber running back someday. Go the route of some other QBs that have switched positions, depending on how his development goes. So I still think he was worth it. Torrey Horton in the 5th round. Yeah, the Seahawks have drafted, I think, better than anybody for the last 4 years. So anyway, given the fact that they've basically built 2 championship caliber teams under John Schneider in 2 different windows, do we go elite? It really is just a matter of, are we far enough past the 2016 to 2021 era of Seattle to put them in elite? I think, by the way, I think here's the last point that I wrote down on them and why I'm going to put them in elite. And maybe someone in the chat said this, but how they've played the timing of these quarterbacks has been incredible as well. Because you moved on from Russ at the absolute perfect time. You get all those picks for him. You end up with Geno, who was awesome for them. And then they moved on from Geno at the perfect time. and are the one team that was really willing to bet on Sam Darnold, which, look, hindsight's 2020. Kevin O'Connell didn't want to bet on Sam Darnold. I, as a lifetime Sam Darnold truther, questioned, what happened at the end of that year for Minnesota. They were the team that said, nope, we believe in the tape, we believe in the player, and gave him the money. I think that gets them into the elite tier, the way they've played the QB situation, let alone finding, by the way, Russell Wilson in the third round to begin with. So I think we got to put the Seahawks in elite. All right. Quick sip here. I did get a super chat in there too that I got to read. All right. The super chat is from Lex Nuke. Let's go Seahawks. We the best front office in the league, except for letting Anthony Bradford start. Yeah, that's the one holdup on the Seahawks is they've, over the years, really struggled to build up that O-line. That's probably like where the teetering goes here, but I think they've done enough this year. The other thing too, I know we're spending a lot of time on Seattle, but they've done a good job too, John Schneider has, of adjusting his philosophy. For so long, it was, we don't need to spend a first round pick at corner. It was years and years of mock drafts. I would put a corner to Seattle, and Seahawks fans would be all over the comments like, Seahawks don't do this. And then they take Devon Witherspoon 6th overall. Same thing happened this year with drafting a guard in the top 20. And I loved it. So I think they're very flexible and obviously know what they're doing. All right. Buffalo Bills. The Bills are fascinating because with them, it's not so much the colossal whiffs by them. It's the lack of any awesome moves that I look at the Bills front office and it's like, what's the most redeeming thing they've done in the last 5 years? Is it drafting Christian Benford in the 5th round, who's a really good scheme fit with Sean McDermott? Is it this year signing Joey Bosa, who, I'll be honest, man, I don't think they had a great plan for Joey Bosa. I'm a little worried with how this thing's going to end. I think there's a lot of upside with how he's played this year, but you knew trotting him out week 3 and 4, giving him 40 snaps a game. How did you think that was going to end? So I think like a little stubborn there, seeing Bosa come in looking fresh and healthy, and then, wow, surprise, we're here in December and he's on the injury report every week. So that's a little polarizing. Yeah, James Cook in the 2nd round is great, but pretty much everybody on this list at some point is, if you get long enough, you're going to find a good running back in the second day of the draft. You got to go back to Josh Allen in 2018, but that's a long time ago, man. That's a long time ago since you put, your faith in Josh Allen. Let's look at their drafts. I'm leaning D for Buffalo, but let's look at their drafts and see if it changes my thoughts, kind of like it did with Cleveland. Okay, Fly Later says Terrell Bernard pick is really good. I couldn't disagree more. I actually think Terrell Bernard, I'm actually critical of the front office for not having a little bit more backbone against Sean McDermott for saying, no, we don't have to give this guy $11 million. We can replace this guy. Terrell Bernard's been horrible this year, dude. He's been one of the worst defensive players in the league. He's a critical reason the Bills are bottom 3 in run defense this year. I don't know, man. I will consistently push back on the Terrell Bernard love because I just think it's, for whatever reason, Sean McDermott has an absolute crush on the guy. So I'm not going to give them credit for Terrell Bernard. I think he's been a very average mid-round draft pick that's just overrated by their overrated head coach. But okay, let's look at the Bills draft history here. So, let's go back to like 2020, like the moment Josh Allen's kind of good and you've got championship expectations. So you go AJ Epinesa, second round, that's fine. Zach Moss, third round, not really worth it. Gabe Davis, fourth round. Pretty good pick for a fourth rounder for what they got from him. My boy Jake Fromm. It's funny when people hold my January Jake Fromm takes against me. Because I originally had a higher grade on him than I did Justin Herbert. As the draft process went on, he ended up well below. Isaiah Hodgins, good pick in the sixth round, but they didn't stick by the guy. I would have loved to see Isaiah Hodgins develop on that team. Dane Jackson, seventh round. So not the worst draft, but nothing, again, I think this is a theme with the Bills. Nothing like, oh my God, great pick, amazing steal, you know? All right, 2021, Greg Rousseau, pick 30. That's a very, very good pick, and I love that one. I think it's probably the best draft pick they've made from a value standpoint in the 2020s. We'll see if that holds up. But that was a really good pick. Well, okay, take that back. Spencer Brown. This draft was awesome. It was. So you have an okay draft in 2020. Considering they don't have a first-round pick, they gave that up for Stephon Diggs, which was a very good move for them. They didn't have the foresight to know that Justin Jefferson was going to fall to the 20s. So I think you pair that all together. Okay draft, elite draft here. I think any given draft, you walk out with Spencer Brown, who's one of the best right tackles in football, and Greg Rousseau, chef's kiss. So that's spectacular. I'll give them that. And then you completely fall flat on your face. I mean, Kyrie Elam, this was a whole debacle. They let the Chiefs jump them to the 22nd pick. They miss out on Trent McDuffie, and then they settle for Kyrie Elam, who, this is what I don't understand, horrible scheme fit. Kyrie Elam had no idea what he was doing in zone. You have a zone forward defense. Why are you taking Kyrie Elam? That made no sense. Now, James Cook, like we said, incredible pick at running back, the easiest position to draft in the NFL, but he's been incredible. Then you go Terrell Bernard. Okay, again, in my opinion, very average third-round pick. Bills fans will say it's a slam dunk. I think he's a very average third-round pick, a below-average starter. And then Khalil Shakir was awesome. Christian Benford. Okay, so, I mean, you still walk out of this with James Cook, Khalil Shakir, and Christian Benford. I got to give them credit. Those are two excellent drafts there. All right, let's keep going. 2023, Kincaid in the first round, 25th pick. Not a great pick. Not a horrible pick, not a great pick. Osiris Torrance, end of the second round, okay pick. He's a starter for them on a very good offensive line. Dorian Williams, third round pick, love his potential. Roadblocked by Terrell Bernard. I think there's still a bright future for him somewhere, whether that's in Buffalo or somewhere else. So, average draft. Then you go to 2024. Your first round pick, essentially Keon Coleman after you trade down. The rest of this draft, you get Ray Davis. I liked Cole Bishop. He's playing well this year, but I thought Dwayne Carter was super overdrafted. Below average draft. And then you go to this year, Maxwell Harrison's been hurt. Jackson Hawes was a great pick. I think they're a better drafting team than I give them credit for. They do just frustrate the hell out of me. I think the last thing I'll say here before we move on with the Bills, and we did get a super chat here, is what's your issue with my Bills? Always hating on them. SMH, we make the playoffs, hater. Well, thank you for the super chat, Cody. And I'm giving them some love here, looking back at this draft history. It's better than I think I thought with Brandon Bean. I always want to say Billy Bean from Moneyball. So draft history is a little better, but I still think there's some frustrations with free agency, and the Von Miller signing wasn't, that didn't play out well for them. They gave him way too much money. And I think their inability to replenish that wide receiver room, when they let Stephon Diggs go, and then their answers are Keon Coleman and Joshua Palmer was their big free agent signing this offseason. That's just not good process. They're not a D. Chat saying C or D. I think C is right. Some good and a lot of just lackluster moves. All right, let's move on to Brian Gutekunst and the Green Bay Packers, who I have been a persistent hater of for a long time. And it's like year by year for the last 3 years, steadily has impressed me, Brian Gutekunst. There's still a lot to complain about with him, and I still to this day think Brian Gutekunst is the definition of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back GM. He does a lot of good stuff. You go back to like some of the free agent signings, getting Campbell and Rasul Douglas, and if we pull up their draft history, like Jair Alexander, Rashawn Gary, there's even at the early Brian Gutekunst days, which was 2018, there's a lot of really slam dunk draft picks in there. Let me just pull this up. So, who was, like Elton Jenkins was a great second round pick. Now, and then you have also in that time, they signed the Smith brothers, really good free agency where they get Adrian Amos, who was a really good safety for them, and then Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith well outplayed their contracts. So like he kind of came in and like did well. But what happened here? 2020 to 2021 was unforgivable. Unforgivable. I mean, this was a completely botched 2-year run of general managing, other than the one thing he did that I praised on this channel, and that was draft Jordan Love. These drafts were hilarious, and I hated them at the time. A.J. Dillon in the second round, no value there. You had Aaron Jones on the roster. Even worse, Josiah DeGuara, when he could have had someone like Darnell Mooney in that draft. They got John Runyon. This is something the Packers do really well. This is almost, Gutekunst is lucky that they have the O-line coaching that they have in Green Bay. I'll say that, but I mean, it was a good pick, like good dart throw to make. But the thing I always say about the Packers is they could have drafted Jordan Love, gotten ready for the future. They could have had their cake and ate it too. There was no reason to have these horrible draft picks. You could have actually given Aaron Rodgers some offensive support to win that year and this year. This draft was just as bad, if not worse. I mean, Eric Stokes, as a first-round pick, was a below-average player. There were better corners to be drafted. I think Asante Samuel would have been a better pick for them. I think, obviously, the other Georgia corner, Tyson Campbell, was someone I was clamoring for. He's been a much better player than Eric Stokes. And then to take Josh Myers, the pick before Creed Humphrey, it's not just hindsight. That was a mind-numbingly terrible decision, like trying to be the smartest guy in the room. Like, let's take the Big Ten guy over the, Oklahoma guy. Like, I don't know what the hell that was. It just blows my mind that an NFL GM can watch the tape and want Josh Myers over Creed Humphrey, the best center in the NFL. So those were bad. And then they get nothing else out of this draft other than Isaiah McDuffie was a really nice dart throw in the 6th round. He was turned into a nice player. Darryl Slayton ate up some nose tackle snaps, but Amari Rodgers and Royce Newman were complete flops. So, like, it's hard for me to get over this when you have back-to-back MVP Aaron Rodgers, and they just, both these years, they just couldn't quite get over the hump, right? They were just a little bit outgunned by the Bucs in that NFC Championship, a little bit outgunned by the Niners. They just didn't have the offensive talent to overcome that Niners defense that year in bad conditions. Then things get better. 2022 was a brilliant draft, other than the Quay Walker pick, which I still think is a knock on Gutekunst, just bad value. Said at the time, he's probably going to turn into a pretty good player eventually by the time you have to pay him, and that's exactly what's happened. You do a do-over on that pick, man. Quay Walker's been first 2 years was a bad player. Last year was a starting caliber linebacker. This year he's been like pretty nice starter. And now you have to pay him. But other than that, like all these picks were just incredible, man. Devontae Wyatt, late first round, really good value. He's a good pass rushing DT. Christian Watson was a slam dunk move. Has had some injuries, but Otherwise, really nice player. Sean Ryan in the third round. Took a little while, but I mean, man, another big reason why we're getting ahead of ourselves. That's another reason you don't give Aaron Banks $20 million. Sean Ryan's a great player. Romeo Dobbs. Zach Tom in the fourth round, one of the best picks any GM's made in the last 4 years from a value perspective. Kingsley Enagbari, contributor in the edge room. Rasheed Walker, a franchise left tackle in the seventh round. I mean, this is just an absurd draft. The worst thing they did was take Quay Walker in the first round, and that's, it was a poor decision, but not an egregious one. I don't think in him turning into a decent player. Then you go to 2023. Love this draft. I think Lucas Van Ness, gets a little bit too much hate. Unfortunately, he's been hurt this year, but I think he's looked really good when he's played. Luke Musgrave's even shown he can play a little bit, stepping up this year in year 3. Jaden Reed, amazing pick. Tucker Kraft, obviously, incredible draft pick. Dontavion Wicks has been a good contributor. Carrington Valentine's their best cornerback. Really nice draft. Other than spending a fifth-round pick on Sean Clifford was just, again, he sometimes does these things that it's just like, why? Why'd you have to do that? He just wasn't an NFL prospect. All right, 2024. Jordan Morgan, not looking great, I will admit, but Edrin Cooper, Javon Bullard, they've gotten some bad luck with Marshawn Lloyd. The Tyron Hopper pick, again, just like one step forward, one step back. Like, why are we lighting third-round picks on fire? But they find Evan Williams in the fourth round. The last 2 day 3s have been rough. They didn't really get... I guess you got Evan Williams, so I can't really say that. But this year, I thought it started great and got worse as it went on. Excited to see Colin Oliver take the field. Anyway, we're spending a lot of time on the draft history here. They've been better. They've been much better as of late. I still don't fully trust Brian Gutekunst with picks, and when they went and got Micah Parsons, which is a good transition out of the draft stuff, my first thought was like, great, we don't have Gutekunst to light first-round picks on fire anymore. But anyway, that takes me to the Micah Parsons trade, which was awesome. I mean, obviously, the injury is just devastating. You can't see that coming. I still think you do it all over again. They aren't in the playoffs right now without Micah Parsons, in my opinion. And I trust that he's going to come back pretty strong. So I think the Packers go B. Yeah, that's thank you for bringing that back up, Jacob. I've alluded to it. The Aaron Banks signing was just like, every year there's a move or two that Gutekunst makes where it's just like, who thought this was even a conceivable idea for an NFL GM to make? Like, he does these things that's just like, what? And the Aaron Banks signing was one of those. And that was the thing this year. So I've gotten to a point where I think the Packers are above average front office, but they still do stuff that's just like crazy. And the fact that they didn't do anything to the interior of the D line after they traded Kenny Clark away was also weird. Like, go trade for a veteran. Just get somebody in that D tackle room other than Devontae Wyatt, who's like a pass rushing specialist, to give you a little more beef there. Again, very back and forth front office, but there's a lot of just major slam dunk moves. So, also Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney signings last year. Like, there's a lot to break down with Green Bay. They're very polarizing, but I'm going to put them B tier, and I'll put them ahead of Carolina. And I'm by the way I'm going to keep the Niners ahead of the Bills. We're going to rank this left is higher. All right, let's keep going. The New Orleans Saints. How long have we been live here, by the way? We're at, we're an hour. We're doing okay. These tier maker videos have been about an hour and a half to 2 hours, so we're doing all right there. New Orleans Saints. Mickey Loomis hasn't made a lot of friends down there in New Orleans as of late. I have to give Mickey Loomis still credit for being the godfather of the modern cap management era. The Philadelphia Eagles and Howie Roseman, they don't exist without Mickey Loomis. He deserves credit for that. Now, their unwillingness to just bite the bullet and just do what's right for this team for the last 4 years has been exhausting. And it got them to a pretty dark place. But I have to say, man, the second that they kind of flipped that switch and said, you know what, it's time. They really didn't spend money. They did sign Eric Reed, right? Not Eric Reed, Justin Reed. Like, they made one signing because they couldn't help themselves, but signing one safety to a 3-year, $30 million deal that, honestly, when you look at the safety market this year, that was a pretty valuable signing with a lot of guys getting like north of $15 million. You know, that one signing's not going to, ruin everything. And their secondary's been pretty damn good this year. So what I'm saying is, the second that they did admit it's time to, reshift, rebuild, start to clear up some cap flexibility for 2028 and beyond, they've done this rebuild as good as anybody could have possibly asked in 1 year. I like that the chat's bringing up Chase Young. I like that they brought him in on the cheap. He was a piece that, if he hits, he can actually be a contributor 3 years down the road. He's not super expensive. He's getting $15 million a year, and he's played great. So that's a great call out by the chat. But this draft with Banks, build through the offensive line, I think I like to think that Mickey Loomis had a pretty large say in the coach hiring with his kind of power in that organization. There's very few GMs with the power that Mickey Loomis has. So Kellen Moore looking like a great signing. And then Tyler Shuck was, NFL circles liked him, but that was never going to be a popular pick. And I'm obviously proud to say that I came on here on this channel and loved Tyler Shuck, but that was not going to be an easy pick to make, and a lot of foresight there. So you've got that. You've got Jonas Sanker on the flip side, a pick that I didn't love. He looks awesome. So I got to say, man, as hard as those down years were the last 4 years, I think Mickey Loomis knows what he's doing at the end of the day. I think you don't put him A, you don't put him elite, but I'm going to put him B tier. I think there's, like I said, there's a lot of negative stuff to bring up with his resume. No, hold on. I'm getting ahead of myself. We're letting recency bias get ahead of me, because I am remembering some of these drafts the last few years. We got to look at this. We got to look at this. This is why I wanted to do it with the chat, because you guys can talk me off a ledge, or not off a ledge, but back me off a ledge when I'm doing some of this stuff. Last year's draft was actually pretty good. Fuaga and McKinstry, great. But yeah, the Foskey pick, I thought Foskey was a 4th round prospect. They really got pretty much nothing out of this draft. Brian Brzez's a good situational pass rusher. The Trevor Penning thing. Yeah, dude. This is what we're talking about. For you to think you're a Trevor Penning, for what he was as a prospect out of Northern Iowa, to think you're a Trevor Penning away, where you give up a future 1st-round pick that turns into Jalen Carter. This team could have Jalen Carter on it right now. To go up, we got to get Trevor Penning to pair with Jameis Winston. That is inconceivable. Inconceivable. Alontae Taylor's a decent player for a 49th pick. But yeah, Peyton Turner in the 1st round, horrible draft pick. Cesar Ruiz was a reach. And then we're going back pretty far at this point. But yeah, they traded multiple 1st-round picks for Marcus Davenport. There's some brutal picks. But the last few years have been better. I think I'm going to put him over the Niners and the Bills. Oh yeah, it was a future 2nd as well for the Trevor Penning trade. I'm going to put him over the Niners and the Bills. But I like the direction that they're heading. I think they're getting back on track. And again, you cannot understate how he changed the NFL. He changed the NFL until they write in rules that you can't have void years and move guarantees around. he was the one with the foresight to do all this stuff. So I think C feels right. A lot to be critical of, but there's some positives in there too. I'm a little bit higher on Mickey Loomis than I think some people. Okay. Oh yeah, the Derek Carr contract was so bad too. We didn't even mention that. I mean, I said it multiple times in multiple places. That was my least favorite move any team made that offseason. It just made no sense. It was just going to waste time, and it's exactly what happened. So that was bad. All right, Raiders. Too early to tell with the new GM, with John Spytek. I mean, this year's not off to a great start. Obviously, you take Ashton Jeanty early. That, I think, was a part of having Pete Carroll. The rest of their draft, gosh, kind of forgettable. What else? Who else did they take this year? Did they get anything that looks promising out of this draft? Am I just having a brain fart right now? Oh, Jack Bash, Darian Porter. Yeah. Dante Thornton. It's just too early to tell, man. Like, I like the potential on all these guys. Ashton Jeanty's going to be a superstar if the Raiders get their act together. I like Jack Bash. I like Darian Porter as a prospect. Caleb Rogers shows some promise. It's just too early. We don't have to. We don't have to spend too much time here. I just hope that the one thing I'll say is I would move on from Pete Carroll. They just shut Max Crosby down for the year, and he's apparently not happy about it. Get the number 1 pick, lose to the Giants. And honestly, I would trade down. I would get the extra picks. We'll see what my final grade on Fernando Mendoza is, but for my Patreon friends here in the chat that have watched my Patreon film rooms on Mendoza, it's going to take a lot of good film in the remaining games that I have to watch on him for me to think he's worth the number 1 pick. So if I'm them, I actually get the picks, trade Max, and go full rebuild and just build around Jeanty and Bowers. But let's move on. Dallas Cowboys. Obviously a polarizing one, and I have defended the Cowboys front office quite a lot, and this is why their draft history. Sorry. The Cowboys front office gets a lot of crap because of Jerry Jones. But if you go back to, I would say about 2013, even 2011, 2010, like 2010, starting with Dez Bryant, their drafts are awesome. I mean, you got Dez Bryant, Sean Lee, boom. Tyron Smith, DeMarco Murray, boom. This draft, not as great. Morris Claiborne, first round, 6th overall. That's pretty bad. But you bounce back. You take a borderline Hall of Fame center at the 31st pick, Travis Frederick. Boom. Terrence Williams was a good player. Next draft, Zach Martin and DeMarcus Lawrence. Are you freaking kidding me? You can't have a better draft than that with the 16th and 34th overall pick. Byron Jones, the next year, was a really good player for them. Randy Gregory was a talented player for the 60th pick. They got something out of him. Then you have the Zeke, Dak Prescott draft. Insane year. Zeke with the 4th pick, you obviously running back value and all that stuff, but Zeke was a hell of a football player. It was not the worst pick. Even Jalen Smith was good for them for a few years. Then 2017, Taco Charlton was a bad first-round pick, but they still end up with Chidobe Awuzie, gave them some good years at the end. Jordan Lewis had a long year for them. Xavier Woods was a good player, but not really for them, I guess. Noah Brown, some okay players there, but you go to 2018, Leighton Vander Esch, really good player for a while. Connor Williams gave them a lot of good years. Michael Gallup did. Dorrance Armstrong, Dalton Schultz, hell of a draft there. 2019, they didn't have a first-round pick. Let's see. What would they have done with that first rounder? What was that first rounder? Who did they trade that for? Chat's going to help me out with that one. But look, Connor McGovern, really nice player. They didn't end up extending him, but they got, I think, a year out of him. Tony Pollard in the 4th. You got Donovan Wilson still starting for them at safety. Not my favorite player, but for a 6th-round pick. That was the Amari Cooper trade, which was a good trade for them. It was. Then you go 2021, you draft Micah Parsons 12th overall. Obviously, we know what happens there. We'll get there. But Osa in the 3rd round. Really a nice draft there. 2022, you take Tyler Smith, Jake Ferguson, Deron Bland in that draft. 2023, that was a down year for them for sure. Mazzie Smith, one of the worst first-round picks that we've talked about here, but you at least found Overshown in the 3rd round. But yeah, obviously that draft was a whiff. But 2024, you get Tyler Guyton. It's not great, but Cooper Beebe in the 3rd round. Marshawn Nealand, obviously a tragedy there. So these 2 years, not the best. I'll say that. Ryan Flournoy looks like a nice pick. But then this year looks like they're right back on track. I skipped the 2020 draft. Yeah, I skipped the 2020 draft. CeeDee Lamb, Trayvon Diggs, Tyler Biadasz. Are you kidding me? Like, they have so many amazing drafts. Thank you, Coaster and Charlie. But then this year, again, right back on track. Tyler Booker, Donovan Ezeraku looking like incredible values. Ravel looks like he's not ready to play right now, coming off that injury. But anyway, I will go to the table and say, you go back the last 15 years, it is hard to argue any team as a more consistent drafting team than the Cowboys. You're going to have your down years. It happens to everybody. They say if you hit about 50% on your draft picks, or just on your drafts in general, you're doing the right thing. And I would say they hit on 80% of these drafts. I mean, just outstanding drafting. So for all the crap that Jerry Jones gets, Will McClay is heavily involved here, and I think they do an excellent job there. Now, I think the Jerry Jones of it all limits their upside. There's just stupid shit that happens that doesn't have to happen and doesn't happen to a lot of other organizations, right? The Micah Parsons trade, how that entire thing was handled, I'm speechless, right? Like, I never thought you would get to the end of that and trade Micah Parsons on his rookie deal. Like, at the end of his rookie deal. It's just crazy. Now, if they had to do it, I think you're talking about a team that drafts incredibly well. They reloaded that D-line. They took one of those firsts and turned it into Quinnen Williams. Like, there's worse ways to adjust after trading Micah Parsons, but the fact that you got there to begin with is crazy. And then there's a loyalty thing with Jerry that hurts them as well, and how they handle their contracts. It's like they either love a guy and pay them way too soon and way too much money. Zeke Elliott and Dak Prescott. I mean, Zeke got paid. Was it after his 2nd year that Zeke got paid? I know that he had multiple years left of cheap control, and they just caved and gave him a bunch of money, and Zeke was never the same when he got paid. And then Dak Prescott, it's like, we'll reach a point here in about a year where the Dak contract doesn't look as bad, but we're now 2 years into this thing, and Dak got $60 million a year, and no one's ever really gone over that, like $54-55 million. Like, Mahomes takes a little bit less for the Chiefs, but like Josh Allen got 54, Jordan Love got like 55. I think Herbert was at like 55. And it just was like, why are you giving him that much that soon? So and then on the flip side of things, they can like wait too long to pay guys, and it costs them money. They did it with CeeDee Lamb. I think there's an argument they should have paid George Pickens already, because the longer they wait, that's only going to cost them money. I think that's very predictable to see some drama coming with that. So they do some stuff that shoots themselves in the foot, but their drafting success is remarkable. I'm going to put them in the B tier, similar to like the Packers, where they do some frustrating stuff that gets in their way. But they do a lot of stuff that sets them up for success too. So I'm gonna put them B tier. All right, Chicago Bears. Bear down, baby. Good, better, best. Ryan Poles. Not the best start for Ryan Poles. So he's getting some credit this year. Obviously, they're starting to win. The first like really good Ryan Poles moves have happened this year. I think their first couple draft picks, a lot of it I think is Ben Johnson coming in and wanting his guys, but Luther Burden and Colston Loveland, chef's kiss. Those guys look great. Now you go down the board, and we should probably just pull up their draft history here. I still think Ryan Poles' inability to fill out this defense, and especially on the D-line, it's bad, man. Like, if I'm a Bears fan, do I trust that they're going to get this defense right? And I understand by the metrics, their defense has had some good games. It is entirely turnover dependent, and I'm sorry, Bears fans, it's not going to keep up into next year. You might keep it going this year, but you got to rush the passer. You got to stop the run. You got to do the down-to-down stuff a hell of a lot better if you expect to be a great defense. And you look at spending the 62nd pick on Shamar Turner was a horrible pick. They reached on Ruben Hippolyte. I mean, they did nothing to address the D-line last year other than took Austin Booker, who does show some promise. I like the Austin Booker pick, but we're a long way away from him like being a heavy contributor still. Javon Dexter's been a pretty good player for the 53rd pick. You could do worse there. Tyreek Stevenson has been pretty mid. Zach Pickens was a really bad pick at the time, I thought, and he was cut, I think, this year. You know, Noah Sewell was a nice 5th-round pick. Terrell Smith showed some promise. He got hurt this year. I think that plus, I mean, what's the best free agent move the Bears have made on defense? Signing Nahshon Wright? I guess that's it. I mean, Kevin Byard's been good for them, obviously, forcing turnovers. I think when you look at their ability to build the defense, it's a huge concern. And I think getting Dennis Allen is bailing Ryan Poles out quite a lot, because I think Dennis Allen gets that defense to play well above their, punch way above their weight class right now. And then you look at the offensive side of things, and I think it's been pretty average. I like that they got DJ Moore in the Bryce Young trade. And I think the decision to do that trade was right. Obviously in hindsight, that's the thing with Ryan Poles, is I think he's just incredibly lucky. Like, if you just want my honest take on this, I think he's just incredibly lucky, because he bet on Justin Fields, you guys. He bet on Justin Fields over Bryce Young, and I know, and CJ Stroud, by the way. Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. He could have had either of those guys. But he chose to trade out of that pick, go with Justin Fields, and pass on those QBs. He got so lucky that Caleb Williams fell into his lap with the Panthers pick, right? Incredible. Where are the Bears right now? If the Panthers just gave the Bears the 4th pick that year and all the QBs were gone and they were just the Giants, right? Number one, you're sitting there probably still with Justin Fields. I mean, who the hell is the Bears quarterback if that didn't happen? And then you don't get Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson does not leave Detroit to go to the Bears if Caleb Williams isn't there. So that was all incredibly lucky. I think that was a questionable decision, but it worked out for them, right? And then Ben Johnson comes in and says, you know what? I really like Colston Loveland and Luther Burden. Those are my guys. And so Ryan Poles caves and gives him his guys. He doesn't stand his ground and say, you don't need Luther Burden. We got DJ Moore at home. He just completely caves and lets Ben Johnson come in and get his guys. So if I'm being honest about Ryan Poles as a GM, if I'm a Bears fan, I'm still terrified moving forward that he's good at this thing. I don't know that I'm giving him a whole lot of credit for Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen and the Carolina Panthers kind of bailing his ass out. And I'm curious what Bears fans think about that. If I did this, in the offseason, I probably would say low C, high D. I also didn't mention the offensive line signings. I think, again, that was Ben Johnson really coming in and saying, we got to do this. We got to prioritize this. But I do think Ryan Poles went after the right guys and gets credit for that. I think the Bears are C tier until proven otherwise. I do. Like, I think I did a good job separating the fact that they've had some stuff go right for them, but I don't know that I give the front office and Ryan Poles really credit for that. Like, dude, Caleb Williams fell in their goddamn lap. They could have been so screwed. They could have been right back where they've been for the last 2 decades if the Panthers just won another game. Like, it's insane. So I'm gonna go C tier for the Bears, and we'll see what you guys think about that. All right, Indianapolis Colts. I need a sip of water after that. All right, and the chat is saying, we got to at least mention Darnell Wright, and I agree. Darnell Wright was a great pick in the top 10. Darnell Wright's been awesome. I do have some super chats from Dylan. Sorry I missed this when I was doing Packers, but he says, go Pack, go. But also, I don't trust Goody at all. I trust him slightly more, but he's still got a lot of work to do. And then Lex says, as a secondhand Saints fan, we are D tier. I got him C. All right. Indianapolis Colts. So we're definitely going over 2 hours, but that's fine. This is fun. So Colts I've gone back and forth with a lot over the years. They had a really great run of drafting with Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith, and Darius Leonard was really a nice find in the second round. Jonathan Taylor, like, even to this day, a lot of the core players were built about a half decade ago. Let's pull up their draft history, because that's probably ultimately what's going to decide this thing. One second here. The one thing I did write down on the Colts, though, before we look at the draft history, is for years it was they're not aggressive enough, and there was some really frustrating years there where it felt like the Colts needed to just make a little bit more of a move. They did go get DeForest Buckner, and that has been an incredible trade by Chris Ballard. This year, they went for it. They signed Shavarius Ward, they signed Cam Bynum, and they trade 2 first-round picks and Adonai Mitchell for Sauce Gardner. And then they've just gotten bad luck. Sauce and Ward have been hurt. So I think they've been a little bit more aggressive as of late. I think the roster overall is a really good roster, and the way they've built that offense is spectacular. So let's look at like the last, I guess, let's just go to the draft history. So this is where things started to underwhelm a little bit, was 2021, because like I said, like, these drafts all were awesome. Ryan Kelly this year, although the rest of it was kind of meh, but you built in like Grover Stewart. 2017 was pretty mid. I mean, Malik Hooker wasn't great for them. Quincy Wilson in the second round, Terrell Basham. The draft wasn't great, but here's where we're talking about. Quentin Nelson, Shaq Leonard, Braden Smith, Tyquan Lewis, a nice player still on the team. Nyheim Hines was a good pick for them. Zaire Franklin's still on the team. Great draft. 2019, they didn't have a first-round pick. This was when they sent it for Buckner, right? Or Carson Wentz was one of those years. It's a little more streaky than I thought, but Bobby Okereke was a nice player, but those top 3 second-round picks, all very bad. All right, sorry, I'm kind of talking out loud here. I'm probably losing you here, but I think what I'm trying to say is their draft warts, I think, started a little bit sooner than I was saying earlier. Like, this 2019 draft was really bad. Rock Ya-Sin, Ben Bonnigue, and Paris Campbell, second-round picks. You get pretty much nothing else. EJ Speed was a contributor for them, but Bobby Okereke, who you let walk, was really the only thing you got out of that draft. Then 2020, you make up for it. You get Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, Julian Blackmon was a nice player for them. Isaiah Rodgers was a really good pick in the 6th round. Couldn't have predicted his gambling issues. 2021, though, Kwity Paye, Dayo Odeyingbo, Kylan Granson, not good. Will Fries in the 7th round. They have drafted offensive linemen really well. But then they get back on track. 2022, they take Alec Pierce, incredible pick. Jelani Woods was a nice dart throw in the 3rd round, just couldn't stay healthy. Bernard Raymond in the 3rd round, unbelievable value. Nick Cross has been a really good player. That's a great draft. But then you make the bet on Anthony Richardson. And we've seen how that's gone. But they did come out of that draft with Josh Downs in the 3rd round. Julius Brents. They've taken some guys that have not stayed healthy. Juju Brents, Jelani Woods, really bad injury woes. But that's a lot of draft picks to just get Josh Downs. Looking at all these picks, that's not a good draft. It's not. Even if you get Josh Downs in the 3rd round, that doesn't make up for 11 picks or however many that is where you get nothing. Then you get 2024, good draft. Laiatu Latu, Matt Goncalves, Tanner Bortolini, Jelon Carley's actually hasn't played that much for them, but still a fascinating player. Adonai Mitchell was I think worth it with the 52nd pick, was always going to have some risk attached to him. And then this year, Tyler Warren, 14th pick is great. I thought this was early for Tuimoloau, honestly, or at least like for a team that's needed more of a high-end edge presence. I just didn't see you getting that from him. He's a good run defender, but that's about it. TBD on a lot of these guys. Wally got hurt. That was unfortunate. So the draft history, I know that was a roundabout conversation. It's a bit of a roller coaster. There's a lot of highs and a lot of lows. I would say it's still an above average drafting team. But I think a lot of the swings and misses at quarterback are where they're going to get a lot of criticism. Like Carson Wentz flamed out after a year. You spent a 1st round pick on that. You go big for Anthony Richardson. The Matt Ryan thing was a disaster. This year, Daniel Jones was a good move. But that takes me to trading 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner. And was that the time to be super aggressive when they're 8-1 and they're all in on this team this year? Hindsight's 2020, but that was bold for a front office that typically doesn't get super bold. Honestly, that was one of the crazier moves, more aggressive moves. That honestly, we've only seen the beginning of Sauce Gardner with the Colts because he got hurt. So you're hoping he can come in and be the old Sauce Gardner moving forward and still feel good. It's not like he's just disappeared, right? Even if recency bias, you're like, well, he's not there. I still think him and Shavarius Ward have a chance to be a really special duo. They're a tough one. They are. My gut's telling me just put him in C tier and move on. Like, they're just very up and down, kind of like the Bills. Like, they do remind me a lot of the Bills in that they've had their own hurdles that they've struggled to get over. So I like them more than the Bills front office, but they're a tough one. All right, Patriots, very new. They're only in their 2nd year here with Elliott Wolf and their 1st year with Mike Vrabel, who's got a big say here. But they are a tale of 2 halves for Elliott Wolf because the 1st year was horrible. Elliott Wolf's 1st draft in his 1st offseason, I was like, yikes, man, this is bad. But this year, much, much better. Like I said it at the time, dude, Drake May was a layup. You don't even really get credit for that. I said at the time, like, this was an egregious decision to trade down when you have Ladd McConkey sitting in your lap, to trade down and take Jalen Polk like 4 picks later. Mind-numbing. I had McConkey as a 1st-round guy and Jalen Polk as like a late 3rd, early 4th-round guy. Like, for that to be how you played that for Drake May, who needed receivers, that looked devastating. And then the rest of this draft sucks. Caden Wallace has given you nothing as a third-round pick. Layden Robinson showed flashes at run blocker year one and didn't end up winning a starting job. Lost that to a third-round rookie this year. Javon Baker's giving you nothing. Joe Milton, you end up flipping for a pick. That was nice. You kind of duped the Cowboys on that one, in my opinion. But then this year happens. And it's all rainbows and butterflies. And I do think Mike Vrabel coming in helps us a lot, but that's a part of this, right? Having that coach that's going to, be a good fit with the GM. And the draft is definitely looking promising. It's not perfect. It's not. Will Campbell's looking like the right decision. It was always between Will Campbell, Membu, and T-Mac for me with that fourth pick. And Campbell was always going to be the safer of the O-line options. And they needed to guarantee that left tackle. Like I think the Will Campbell pick is perfectly good. And then, like, you really couldn't have gotten wrong with any of those three guys. Travion Henderson, this is where I get caught between trying to defend my draft takes and assessing how good of a pick that was. I think we still have to figure out if Henderson is worth the long-term investment there. I still think there's some questions there. It's a little bit of a boomer bust running style. Is he going to be a featured 3-down back? But it's not like I hated this pick. I just thought it was a little early for him, but he's been really good the last two months. He has. I think you make that pick again in hindsight. And then Kyle Williams hasn't had to play much because of some of these other receivers for them. Jared Wilson's been starting. Craig Woodson has been starting. Swinson was a good risk to take on a guy with some character concerns, some football character concerns, talking back to coaches and that kind of stuff. But anyway, the draft's looking better. And then what they did in free agency to kind of patch holes, Robert Spillane, Carlton Davis has missed time as you expect with him, but he's been good when he's played. I don't know when they got... I'm going to pull up the Our Lads here. I don't know when they picked up Hawkins, but he's been really good for them. So that was, Jalen Hawkins was spotted by them. Harold Landry, credit to them, has been a really good addition. Kayvon Chason I love that signing at the time. He's been really good. They got Milton Williams. They stole him from the Panthers. Stephon Diggs has worked out for them. Morgan Moses, Garrett Bradbury has been in there the whole year for them. Like, they killed it this offseason. So I think we put the Patriots here. Early returns look promising. Year one, they were down here for me. Year two, they're up here. I'm fine with this. Early returns look promising for them. I think you've cooled off on being concerned about Elliott Wolf after that first year. It is hard for me to get over the Jalen Polk over Ladd McConkey thing. But I think they're trending up. But I'm not quite ready to put them up there yet. All right. And you might say, the Panthers are in their second year. Why do they get to go and be? I think there's less critical missteps for the Panthers as there are with the Patriots, because that first year was really bad. The Panthers have been good both years. All right, Detroit Lions. So they're an interesting one because I think when I did this last year, they were top tier for me. They're trending down. Let's pull up their draft history. There have been some legitimate knocks on the Detroit Lions front office the last couple of years. So, obviously, coming out of Brad Holmes takes over in, I've got it in my notes here, 2022? 2021. Yeah, Penei Sewell was his first draft pick. I mean, these drafts, dude, this is kind of like what we said about John Schneider with the Seahawks. Like, this is a franchise-altering run of drafts where you look inside here, you got Penei Sewell, Aleem McNeil, Amon-Ra St. Brown. You can't find a better draft than that. Aiden Hutchinson, Jamison Williams, Kirby Joseph. Insane. Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch. These are the Detroit Lions. Not to mention the trade for Jared Goff. That was one of the more mutually beneficial trades I've seen for a couple of teams, in the last decade. Now, you get to here, 2023, you end the year, you almost make the playoffs. You end the year beating the Packers. Or no, they did make the playoffs in 2023. Right? Am I crazy? What am I remembering? 2022, they get to the end of the year and they beat the Packers. 2023, they lost to the... Oh my God. How do I not remember this? Because they've won a playoff game. Am I nuts? Do I have to look up the frickin'... Has Brad Holmes not won a playoff game? Didn't they lose to the Rams one year? What am I remembering? Oh, that's right. They lost to the Niners. Yeah. Gosh. You guys are like, what an idiot. Yeah, 2023. I'm not crazy. I just got sidetracked. They won a couple playoff games in 2023, but yeah, 2022 was the year. All right. Anyway, we're off the road here. But anyway, you are full on Super Bowl expectations after 2023 is basically what I was trying to say before I got sidetracked. And what have the Lions done in the last 2 years that even stands out to you as a good move? When you look at the drafts and there's basically nothing there to hang your hat on. I mean, Terrion Arnold at 24 was fine. He's been okay, but it's, he's missed some time. But you take a corner with 4.5 speed that was a one-year wonder at Alabama, and he's been very spotty. Rakestraw's been hurt, unfortunately. Giovanni Manu hasn't been able to get out there for them. That's not great, considering they did invest a lot of picks to go and get him. I think they traded a future third to get Giovanni Manu. Vaki and Wingo haven't given them anything. Christian Mahogany is a six round pick's a good pick, but he's a horrible pass protector. He's been as much of a help to them as he has a liability. Free agency, they signed DJ Reader. He's been pretty mid. I think the Carlton Davis signing last year was good. They haven't really done anything in free agency, though, that's like, great job, Lions. This year, same deal. I thought picking up Zadarius Smith when they had all those injuries last year was good. They went and made a trade for him. He gave their pass rush a chance. But this year, DJ Reed's been a horrible free agent signing. Like, he's been washed. You go to this year's draft, and Tyleik Williams at the 28th pick has been probably what you expected. Plodding nose tackle. Tate Ratledge, like I said, great run blocker, horrible pass blocker. Isaac Tesla is a fun one. You have to remember, there's 3 threes next to this name. Isaac Tesla has made all the incredible catches. 15 receptions, 6 of them touchdowns. I think he's going to be really good. I don't know how good. We'll see. But you got to remember, that is 3 third-round picks attached to him. So still a long way to go, I think, before you're like, yep, that was absolutely worth it. But it's looking good. Miles Frazier, nothing else out of that draft. What the hell have the Lions... Chat, help me. What the hell have the Lions done in the last 2 years to help them keep up with other NFC teams getting better and take that step? Nothing. Like, this thing has fallen off in a hurry. And I think, kind of like we saw with the Legion of Boom, amazing start, and then they kind of buy their own Kool-Aid a little bit too much. You draft a run-stuffing nose tackle in the first round. Again, we'll see about Tesla, but man, trading 3 third-round picks for your guy is crazy. The Giovanni Manu trade, saying all we need is a couple press man corners with the first and second round pick, and we're going to be good, even though they're both kind of not, the physical profiles you typically would look for from a press man corner. I don't know. I don't know what to do with the Lions right now. They earned a ton of benefit of the doubt early, but I see a lot of issues with how they've been operating the last 2 years. And I kind of want to put them down in the B tier, and I want to know if that's insane. I mean, I'm just kind of staring at the chat like, am I forgetting something? Like, have they made any good moves in the last 2 years? Because I can't think of one. I guess signing Carlton Davis is the best thing they've done. But do you get a ton of brownie points for that? I'm going B. I'm gonna go at the top of the B tier. But I don't know, man. It's like they belong in the middle here. Is the context added to that? But I'm gonna go B. All right, Cincinnati Bengals. They're F tier. I don't even know if we need to spend a lot of time here on the Bengals. They had a little bit of a run there where the free agency was really good. They built that championship caliber defense, but they've whiffed on so many draft picks. I do like that, like DJ Turner's showing some stuff as of late. You're starting to get like Joseph Asai is doing some stuff for them, but they have drafted poorly and they haven't spent money, but the Bengals' problems transcend draft history and all this. The thing with the Bengals that screws them over, every single team on this list, to some degree, is willing to move guarantees around, do void year contracts, and manipulate the salary cap to open up opportunities to add talent to the roster. Some teams do it more than others because of the different windows that they're in, but it couldn't be any more obvious that the Bengals are in that window when you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, that you should be doing that. When they let Jesse Bates out the door for $16 million a year because they don't know how to manage the cap or aren't willing to get the cash to do it, you are putting yourself behind the 8 ball. It reminds me a good bit of like MLB teams that aren't willing to spend to compete with teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees. Except if you're the Bengals, you don't have to do that. And I don't need to get into the whole MLB thing because I know there's some passionate discussions surrounding that, but it reminds me of that. They remind me of what my Minnesota Twins are doing right now. That's, at the end of the day, the biggest problem. But also, they have 6 people in their scouting department. Duke Tobin has been their GM since 1999. Like, how do you have 6 people in your scouting department? What are we talking about here? Like, it's absurd. So they don't draft well. They don't do free agency well. They don't do the cap well. They're horrible. They need to be at the very bottom, honestly, even below the Falcons. And it's a disgrace. It really is. Okay, Tennessee Titans. They're too early to tell. This is year one for Borgonzi. Although, I do like a lot of the stuff they've done. I think the moves on the O-line could have been worse. I think the draft is looking good with a lot of these playmakers they've found in the third round later in the round in the draft with Iomanner, and DK looks awesome. I like the tight end Helm. Cam Ward, I think, was the right pick, number 1. I don't know that they've shown as much as like the Patriots to go here. I think they're still too early to tell, but I like Borgonzi. There's no reason to be worried about the Titans. I just don't know that there's enough good there to, say too much more. Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, this is not really why you guys are watching this video. We know Howie is honestly, I mean, we can do this. I don't mind doing this. Like, I mean, this is where the Eagles are really at. If we're being really honest. I mean, it's just unfair. You got elite cap management, elite drafting, elite free agency. And you can, the thing with Howie that I think, I don't want to say he's misunderstood because he gets this credit. Yeah, it's the he can't keep getting away with it tier. The fact that we have a Howie Roseman can't keep getting away with it post 5 times a year, it's hilarious. He just picks up all the breadcrumbs that everybody leaves on the ground, and for some reason, no other front office is willing to do it. Jalen Phillips this year, again, like, oh, we can get Jalen Phillips for a 3rd-round pick when we need a little edge help? Yeah, we're going to do that. And by the way, you might look at it right now and say we can't afford to pay him long term. We'll see about that. We got ways to manipulate this cap and make it happen. But even if we let him go, we'll get a 3rd-round comp pick back because they're going to play great on our defense, or he's going to play great on our defense and do that. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, like, he's looking at the draft, not overthinking things. So many of these front offices try to be the smartest guy in the room, and Howie just does what is expected of him. And it sounds crazy that would put you a tier above everybody else, but it does. You know, he's built 2 championship teams, and his quarterbacks have been Nick Foles and Jalen Hurts, and his quarterbacks, his coaches have been Doug Peterson and Nick Sirianni. I mean, what the fuck are we talking about? That doesn't happen. That shouldn't happen. Yet here we are. All right, Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to put them with the Patriots. In the early returns look promising. And I'm going to put, I mean, it's impossible to try to rank these two. Flip a coin, I guess. I hate having to put one over the other. I think they literally should be right on top of each other. So I'm just going to look away and do this and see where they land. All right. So I think with James Gladstone comes in this year, and obviously the first thing you got to talk about is the Travis Hunter trade, which it's just too early to know if that's going to be worth it for them or not. Like, I did my redraft video a few weeks ago, and I said, in hindsight, you probably don't give up the picks to go get him again. But I don't think they necessarily are sitting there like filled with regret. Like, I think you're still sitting there looking at the job Gladstone did to come in and help repair this team and saying, well, we still get to add Travis Hunter into this thing next year, which is really exciting. I think Hunter looked good on both sides of the ball when he played. He looked great. It's just like there's still more to learn there. It was obviously an incredibly aggressive move to do that. You give up the 5th pick, the 33rd pick, and your first round this year. Zach in the chat is saying, do not say the Jags gave up 3 firsts. It's not true. It is true. If you're looking at the value compilation, the 5th pick and the 33rd pick equates to, about 2 number 10s, and then you gave up your first rounder this year for it. So it is 3 first-round picks. You're giving them the even value there is, I mean, the 33rd pick is a hell of a draft pick. That's Quinshon Judkins, man. That's a hell of a football player. Or, Carson Schlesinger was that pick for the Browns. Or maybe it was the other way around, and I'm misremembering that it was like the 34th pick. But anyway, there's a lot to give up, is all we're saying. But I think you look at some of the value additions that this team has made, on top of the Jacoby Myers trade, which is the best in-season move any team has made this year. Maybe Quinnen Williams to the Cowboys, but for a playoff team, Jacoby Myers has changed everything for their passing game. He's just taken the floor of that passing game that's been frustrating all year and just dropped it right where it needs to be. But value additions this offseason, I wrote down on the offensive line, Robert Hainsey and Patrick McCarry. Nice, cheap, floor-raising offensive line moves. Excuse me. And then in the secondary, Eric Murray and Jordan Lewis have been really nice adds. And I think you felt just what, not having bad players in critical position. Man, I'm really losing my voice here. Not having bad players in critical positions will do for a team that's been really balanced. So early returns look very promising. I like what James Gladstone's doing. Obviously, a lot's hanging on the Travis Hunter thing right now, which we just don't know where that's going to land, and we got to see more years of team building. Okay, Denver Broncos. They're another one of these teams where we got to go back to the Russell Wilson trade. So George Paton steps in 2021, or George Patton. I think they're both Paton. But George Paton steps in 2021 and trades for Russell Wilson. One of the worst trades of the decade, right? Like, you are starting about as low as you can for George Paton. However, if you're trying to build the resume back up from that, and I also think he was really underrated in Minnesota too. Just want to say that. I think George Paton's a much better GM than Kwesi in Minnesota right now. I think a lot of Vikings fans would love to have George Paton back. But ever since the Russ trade, which was horrible, I think you look at the Broncos, they have built up both of their lines really well. They signed Mike McGlinchey in 2023. They drafted Quinn Miners in 2021. That was one of George Paton's first drafts. They found Luke Wattenberg in one of those drafts. They signed Ben Powers. The offensive line's been built up. And then what they've done for this D-line, man, they've overhauled this thing to a tremendous degree. I mean, obviously Nick Casabenito, second-round pick, incredible pick. In that first draft, and this was all in my notes, so that's why I'm not pulling up their draft history, but I'll probably do that while I talk here. But in their first draft, they got Jonathan Cooper in the 7th round of George Paton's first draft. You take, I love that they made such an underrated decision letting Draymond Jones walk and signing Zach Allen, who's been obviously a star for them. That was not an easy decision to make. And there was a lot of people that weren't sure about that because they're kind of similar type players. But that's been an incredible decision. They go and get John Franklin Myers from the Jets for like a 7th round pick. Unreal. So the Broncos have really overhauled the D-line. And by the way, they get credit too, I think, for not biting the cheese on Justin Fields when everybody thought they should take him and just going with Pat Surtain, who's one of the best players in football. I mean, that wasn't an easy decision to make. That was the right call by George Paton. So they've built up the trenches. They trade, I think, too, they trade for Sean Payton. That's got to be factored in. Incredible trade there. Recent drafts. We got it up right here. You know, this is where you maybe push back on it a little bit. I don't think they've been a great drafting team overall. I think right around this time, they did a really good job building up the trenches, but obviously Nick Bonito in the 2nd round. But other than that, you're walking out empty-handed from this draft. Greg Dulcich was bad. Like, that's a pretty big whiff of a draft other than Nick Bonito. Granted, you don't have a 1st-round pick because of the Russ trade, so you don't want to self-compound that. This draft is okay. Marvin Mims, late second's okay. Drew Sanders has had injuries. Riley Moss, third round's okay. I don't think Riley Moss is that good, you guys. I think he's okay. Forsythe's a good backup center in the 7th. Obviously, the Bo Nix pick was the right pick. They nailed that. You flip Vele into a 4th-round pick in a year. And then this year's draft's very much TBD. You know, Jahdae Barron, I tweeted this a couple days ago. I said, I'm feeling pretty good about pushing back on all of the crazy Jahdae Barron hype. Like, think about how many people had Jahdae Barron as like a top 10 player in this draft. And I was like, he's okay. I had a 2nd-round grade on Barron. High floor, like solid player, but thought he was pretty damn overrated. And even 20th pick, I was like, that's still a little early, but about as early as I would even start thinking about Jahdae Barron. I like the fit as a slot, but McMillan's played really well there. So, you know, we'll see what he turns into long term. And then RJ Harvey's had some really explosive runs and has been really underwhelming at other times. Pat Bryant looks good, but I think their drafting has probably been below average, if we're being realistic, but they've made a lot of good moves otherwise. So I think they're a B. I think you put them at the end of the B tier just because of the Russ trade was just so bad. I think they're very solid. They have some hits. They have their misses. Okay, New York Giants. We could probably go a little bit quicker here because it's expected that Joe Shane's going to lose his job. And I've had to walk back some of the things I've said about the Giants front office. Because I've said I think they're doing a pretty good job in recent years. And I'll admit, like, I think their last couple drafts have been pretty good if we pull them up. Now, they started off in 2022 and really set themselves back. I mean, these first 2 drafts are tough, man. I guess where I maybe give the Giants a little bit of grace is I think pretty much everybody is surprised by how bad Evan Neal is and how mid Kayvon Thibodeau is. Maybe Thibodeau a little bit less. There was some people that said he's not all that. But Evan Neal, man, like, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone that says that wasn't a good pick. So that one's a little bit hard for me. Is I find a little bit hard for myself to, like, bash them for those picks when I would have made the exact same 2 picks. Cordell Flott in the 3rd round has done a little bit for them, but Micah McFadden, like, there's a couple players in this draft. But then 2023, Banks has been horrible. John Michael Schmitz is developing slowly. Jalen Hyatt has been horrible. And I really liked Deonte Banks. I did. But these drafts are just bad, man. Now, you go to last year. Malik Neighbors, great. Tyler Nubin, down year this year, but a good safety. Drew Phillips, really nice corner. Theo Johnson is developing really well, and I didn't even like that pick. Tyrone Tracy, really nice RB2. It's a good draft, man. Then you go to this year, Abdul Carter, Jackson Dart, Darius Alexander, I still think has a lot of potential. Cam Scattaboo. I'm not the biggest Marcus Bowe fan. But we'll see what he turns into. Now, Coaster just nailed it in the chat. Where they've really gone wrong is some of the guys they've let out of the building. They let Xavier McKinney go. They let Julian Love go. They traded away Leonard Williams. Didn't want to pay Leonard Williams, who's continued to be really good. In return for Leonard Williams, they got Tyler Nubin and Marcus Bowe. It's just not a good return for Leonard Williams. And cap space for sure, but obviously Saquon on top of that as well. So I think there's some areas with the Giants in recent years where you can say they've gotten better. Like the offensive line is finally in a state where they're playable. They've made some good signings there with Illuminor, and Runyon's been Nothing special, but it could be worse. Cole, not Cole Van Lannon. Greg Van Roten has been, a nice player to bring in there. So things could be worse, but there's a lot of bad there. I think D tier works with the bad drafts and letting guys go. The Jackson Dart thing, it's really been made clear that was a Brian Daboll decision as well. And I think we can move on because it really does feel like Shane's going to lose his job here, and this conversation is going to be irrelevant in a couple weeks. All right, Minnesota Vikings. Before we do that, let's catch up on Super Chats. Thank you, guys. We got a bunch of them here. So from Super Pony, Colts fan here, Ballard is the worst GM in the league. He should be in the F tier. 9 years, no division title. Hasn't figured out QB since Luck. He's awful. I get it, man. I think some of those drafts we look at were better than I maybe thought heading in. But Avery says, just here are Bears at the top of C or bottom. They are at the bottom, based on my rant about how lucky I think Ryan Poles has gotten to this point. Then we have from Lil Sketty, getting this before the Vikings come up because I'm busy today, but as a fan, I don't think they're F, even with their disaster drafts. Pro scouting, coach hires have been good enough to get them a D, IMO. So we're about to talk about that. Avery says, what on earth more do you want from the Bears? Man, come on. I mean, I'd like for my GM to be able to build a talented defense when you have plenty of opportunities to do so. I'd like that. And then another one from Avery. In what world are the Bills better than the Bears, who have the Bills drafted since Josh Allen? We went through it. They had a bunch of draft hits that were better than I expected. Someone like Spencer Brown in the 3rd round, who's even better than Darnell Wright, in my opinion. Now, Bears fans are going to hate that because they're both really freaking good. No, I don't think I'm not giving Ryan Poles credit, and we said this earlier, so I'm going to go through this quickly, but I'm not giving Poles credit for literally lucking into Caleb Williams when he bet on Justin Fields, and then Ben Johnson comes in and picks probably his 2 best draft picks by hand. Luther Burden and Colston Loveland were handpicked guys by Ben Johnson. That was very clear. And that's all I have to say about it. Like, I just don't really trust Ryan Poles quite yet. I think he gets credit for picking the right offensive lineman to go after. And that's great, but it doesn't make up for a lot of failures from him. A lot of bad draft picks, a lot of bad D-line investments. All right, let's get back on track. Okay, Minnesota Vikings. Extremely polarizing team. I don't know that there is a front office that's so cut and dry. Great in free agency. Probably the worst drafting team in the league right now. If we pull up Kwesi's draft history, it is on another plane of existence in terms of bad. So he takes over in 2022. Look at this. This is one of the worst drafts I've ever seen. And by the way, I hated this draft at the time. Lewis Cine to me, overdrafted, was basically a kick cover safety for Georgia on that elite defense. He runs a 4-3, and the Vikings say, yeah, not only are we going to take him number 1, we're going to trade down from the 11th pick. We're going to give Jamison Williams to the Detroit Lions, and we're going to trade down and draft Lewis Cine. That's their first move. All right, they take Andrew Booth. He was an injury-prone player. They took a risk on him. I can't slam them for that pick. I can't, but it didn't work out. Ed Ingram, was bad. They benched him and traded him, and then he developed into a nice player for the Texans. Brian Asamoah, complete waste of a pick. Caleb Evans, Otomeo, Ty Chandler, Vidarian Lowe, Jalen Naylor in the 6th round. All right, you found a wide receiver 3. You got something, but that's it. That's one of the worst drafts you'll ever see. Yeah, they could have had Kyle Hamilton in that draft as well. All right, 2023, they sent their 2nd round pick for TJ Hawkinson, which is fine. But Jordan Addison, pick 23, is okay. You know, I think Jordan Addison's a good player. I don't have too much further commentary than that. But you go Mekhi Blackman, did nothing. Jay Ward, Ja'Kalen Roy, Jaron Hall, Dwayne McBride. They got nothing out of this draft other than Jordan Addison with your 1st round pick. And you trade your 2nd round pick for a veteran that's been kind of a okay use of a 2nd round pick, I guess. Better than whoever they were drafting the year before. All right, 2024. I don't know if you heard, but the J.J. McCarthy thing's not looking so hot. Dallas Turner might be a saving grace here. He's really developing. I like Dallas Turner. I liked that move to go get him. They were aggressive. They had already given up a bunch of picks to get an extra 1st, and then they end up taking J.J. McCarthy instead of trading up into like the top 5, which, by the way, thank God the Vikings didn't trade up to like the 5th pick to take J.J. McCarthy. That would be even worse. But obviously it's not looking so great for J.J. We'll see, I guess. They invested a lot to get Dallas Turner, and that's hopefully paying out. But then, I mean, you can't fault him for Kyrie Jackson. That was a horrible tragedy. Rest in peace, Kyrie Jackson. I really liked that pick, honestly. There's a chance where we're talking about that, being a good Kwesi pick. So that's just really unfortunate. Will Reichert might be their best pick. From a value perspective, Will Reichert is awesome. And I was always surprised of all the kickers that get drafted high, the guy that was a superstar at Alabama and is the all-time, kick maker. Now, one thing they did get is Jalen Redmond as an undrafted pickup was also great. And I think that was out of 2024. He's been awesome. But then you go to 2025. Man, I thought Donovan Jackson was the definition of reaching for need. I think he's played like you would have expected from what my write-up on him was, a 2nd, 3rd round guard. He's okay. He's got a decent floor, but he's going to be a rookie guard, and his upside's not that high. Like, there's no way Donovan Jackson is worth the 24th pick in the draft. There's just no way. Ty Felton's done nothing. Ingram Dawkins done nothing. Kobe King's done nothing. Gavin Bartholomew's done nothing. Their drafts are egregious. Egregious. Now, free agency is a whole different story. What they did in free agency last year was lights out. Blake Cashman. They make the bold decision to let Daniil Hunter walk in free agency, and it actually works because they use that money to pay both Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel. Byron Murphy's been awesome for them. Aaron Jones has been a good pickup when they need a running back. Jordan Mason this year. This year they've had some more hits and misses. Will Fry's big contract, I think he's been okay. Ryan Kelly was always going to be a risk. It's not like they gave him that much money. What I always said about the Vikings is I wouldn't have cut Garrett Bradbury because counting on Ryan Kelly to stay healthy was just ignorant. Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave have been relatively underwhelming, but not travesties. But like free agency, no team has been better in free agency than the Vikings, and no team has been worse at drafting than the Vikings. So where does that land? In my opinion, if you value both those things evenly, you would say it's a C. I think drafting is the much harder thing to do than free agency. Free agency, you have a proven, established record of how productive these guys are as NFL players. It's much harder to watch college prospects, project them into your system, and know how it's going to play out. If you're a horrible drafting team and you're really good in free agency, that's a D to me. You still are staying out of the F tier because of free agency, but you got to be able to draft, man. And no one does it worse than the Vikings. So I'm going to put them D, even if it's at the top of that tier. All right. Arizona Cardinals. And I'm gonna ask you guys for a quick bathroom break because I didn't really plan on going 2 hours long, but this has been an absolute blast, and I'm very much enjoying this, but I do have to pee, so just give me a second. And I think I have yeah, I got this. Okay. We got 8 teams left. But I do have one super chat from Avery, who's very fed up with my Bears analysis here, but saying 2025 picks were Ben Johnson picks so they don't count feels very subjective. Why couldn't we say 2022 to 2024 were all Eberflus picks? I hear you. They felt specifically deliberate from Ben Johnson when they did have DJ Moore, who was, on paper, that's a redundant skill set with Luther Burden. And they do have Cole Kmet, who's a starting tight end. That's just my opinion on it. You're allowed to disagree. That's fine. Okay. Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals are fascinating. They are. Because I haven't hated their drafts. We're gonna pull up the Cardinals draft history here. So Monty Ossenfort takes over in 2023. So we have 3 years to look at here. The biggest thing with them is how they managed 2023. They could add Will Anderson. They decided to trade down and then trade back up. So instead of Will Anderson, they walk out with Paris Johnson and then a future first-round pick that ended up, it's kind of like the reverse of Ryan Poles, not to get back on the Ryan Poles subject, but he trades for the future first-round pick and it ends up the number 1 pick in the draft and you get Caleb Williams. Wow, that's pretty freaking lucky. You're the Cardinals. You make a trade with the Texans, who are the favorite to be the number 1 pick in the draft the next year. When the second they pulled the trigger on that trade, go to Vegas, number 1 pick odds for 2024 was the Houston Texans. And they turned into that year's surprise team, and you end up with the 27th pick in the draft. That is the beginning of some very bad luck for the Arizona Cardinals, in my opinion. Because there wasn't an obvious pick to be made at 27. Darius Robinson was a high second-round prospect for me, but when they made that pick, I was like, you know what, I get it. He's supposed to be a high-floor player, kind of fits their system. They need D-line help. It just was very unfortunate. I think how they played that was good process. It just didn't work out. Will Anderson hits all the green lights, becomes, frankly, he's playing at a Hall of Fame level, and you end up with that Darius Robinson pick. It's just like, that's not what you expect. You expect that to be Paris Johnson and, who was let's just say either Dallas Turner or Byron Murphy, or one of those. Hell, if it could have been even just a few picks higher, you could have ended up with frickin' Jared Verse. And how does that change things in the NFC West? But they don't get those guys. They get the 27th pick. So that just sucks. The rest of this first draft, I mean, I thought BJ Ojulari, he's had a lot of injuries, but 41st pick on BJ Ojulari, I can't really fault them for it. Garrett Williams has been an excellent third-round pick. Michael Wilson, excellent third-round pick. I mean, the rest, day 3 was pretty tough, I'll be honest. Marvin at number 4. Everybody was taking Marv at 4. I still believe in Marv. Hindsight, you take Malik Neighbors over him, but those are the 2 highest grades I've ever had on wide receivers. And I would have taken Marv too. I still think Marv's going to be just fine. I'm not on panic level with Marv yet. I'm not. I'm really not. Hasn't been as good as you hoped he would be. Now, I was critical of some of these other picks. Robinson was just kind of a mid pick for me, kind of settling in my opinion, because you were so desperate for D-line help. But I wasn't a huge Max Melton fan. He's been adequate-ish, not worth the 43rd pick. Trey Benson, I still believe in. I think time's going to tell a lot on these 2 guys. Isaiah Adams, I thought was a reach. I like Tip Raymond. He got hurt this year, unfortunately. Elijah Jones hasn't been able to get out there. This draft just hasn't worked out for the Cardinals, unfortunately. And then you go to this year. Walter Nolan, incredible pick. The poor guy's just been hurt. Will Johnson, you took on some injury risks when you get him at 47, but he has been every bit as good as advertised when he's been on the field. Didn't love the Jordan Burch pick. We'll see where that goes. I'll just leave it there. And then you got your day 3 picks, still TBD. I think you see a lot of bad luck with the Cardinals drafts that we talked about there. Injuries, the whole Texans thing. I actually think their drafting, though, has been very sound. And free agency, they've had, I think you go back to last year's free agency, they were frustratingly quiet. This year, though, I thought like everything they did along that D line made sense. They could have done a little bit more, but I don't know, man. The Cardinals are really hard for me because the results have not been there, but I don't really look at them process-wise, other than I wish they would have invested more in the offensive line heading into this year. But I don't know that it's a front office problem with them. They've had a lot of injuries. I don't think they're really well coached. We'll see kind of what they do with Kyler Murray, and that's gonna judge a lot. I think it's just honestly too early to tell for them. I'm gonna put them in the early returns look promising category. I'm curious what you guys think of that. They're a tough one. Okay, Baltimore Ravens. These next 2 ones with the Ravens and the Chiefs are going to be interesting because we're going to kind of take a look at if these front offices are as good as they get credit for. I'm going to pull up the Ravens draft history here. And I just want to look at like the last 4 years when they've had this inability to get over the hump. What are we really looking at here? So I mean, I'm going back a little bit further, just kind of scrolling through this. Let's start in 2020. So you take Patrick Queen in the first round, 28th pick for Patrick Queen. Look, I'm hard on Patrick Queen. You could do worse. J.K. Dobbins at the 55th pick. That's fine. You get Madubuike in the 3rd. That's great. I really liked the Duvernay and Harrison picks, but they didn't turn into anything for them. It was a good draft. Should have been better, but it was fine. But then you go to 2021. Bateman at pick 27. Unfortunately, just hasn't worked out. I liked Bateman. I thought he was a good pick for them, but he's just been in like a wide receiver 3 and nothing more, and you want more than that at pick 27. Odafe Owe just never developed for them. could do worse than him as the 31st pick, but was pretty much an overrated player for his time. Brandon Stevens turned into one good year from him, 3rd round pick. Okay draft, but Ben Cleveland in the 3rd round. I take that back. That's a bad draft. 2022, amazing draft. You get Kyle Hamilton, you get Linderbaum, enough said. Travis Jones in the 3rd round is an extra cherry on top. Charlie Kolar's in there. Isaiah Likely's in there. Incredible draft in 2022. Ojabo was a good risk worth taking. All right, 2023. They have no 2nd round pick because they sent that for Roquan? That had to be Roquan, right? 2023? Believe that was Roquan. So you got Zay Flowers, still a good pick at 22. Trenton Simpson was a good risk worth taking. Maybe he still turns into something in year 4. And then nothing else really. Voorhees has started for them, but he's struggled. Oh, average draft, I would say. Ben Cleveland was over Quinn Miners, says Hayden. See, this is why I need you guys. That's a ding. Quinn Miners was freaking awesome. Okay, 2024, Nate Wiggins, Roger Rosengarten, 2 really good picks. But then you go Adiza Isaac, Tez Walker, TJ Tampa, Rasheen Ali. They didn't really get anything else from this draft last year. And I didn't really like most of these picks after. I didn't even like Rosengarten, to be honest. I thought he was taken a little early, but they saw the athleticism and the plan for him. Then this year, Starks, I think is working out. Mike Green, that's a whole saga that I don't feel like getting into right now, but the reality is he has been bad on the field. Emory Jones, I think, has been hurt most of the year, but I still think Emory Jones has potential. We're going to have to monitor that. Buchanan's been good for a 4th round pick. Tyler Loop, I think, has been pretty good. Surprised we haven't seen more Peebles. I don't know if he's hurt. So the drafting isn't that bad. There's more good than bad. It just kind of makes you wonder, what's missing with the Ravens? And it's similar to the Bills and the Chiefs, where it's they haven't been able to figure out the D-line. And Matabuike getting hurt has been a bummer, of course, but it's just, there's a bunch of draft hits, but you're talking about a couple safeties and a center and linebackers, using a 2nd round pick on Roquan. I just think that holds them back, man. The D-line is something that I always used to think of with the Ravens and their defense, and they've just done a really bad job addressing that, and that's probably the biggest reason their defense has struggled in the playoffs, and they just don't have much of that fear factor about them. I think they're still a really good front office, but I don't look at the Ravens like A-tier slam dunk. And it's not just the D-line, it's the weapons too, right? I mean, their big swings at wide receiver. Zay Flowers is very good, but Rashad Bateman, DeAndre Hopkins, a bunch of 3rd, 4th round picks that haven't really turned into anything. I'm going to put them behind the Lions as a B tier. I don't know. They've just had some shortcomings. And then the Chiefs. Yeah, it is what you do have to bring up the Derrick Henry signing. That's been really good. We'll talk about the Chiefs. I think I've got a couple super chats though. Just one from Super Pony. How many GM head coach openings do I see this offseason? Jeez. Head coach is tough because there's so many teams that they should fire their coach, but will they? Whether it's the Bucs or the Ravens or the Bengals, the Bills, where it's if any of those teams fired their coach, I wouldn't be surprised. But the problem is this is just not a good year for head coach candidates. So I think that's probably going to get a lot of teams to hold on to their guys for another year. So probably 5 or 6 head coach openings. And then GM, Probably not that many, to be honest. I mean, I think Atlanta should fire their GM. Kwesi probably gets another year. Giants probably open up. I think Dolphins we know is open. It's probably just 3 GM openings. All right. Kansas City. We got to pull up the Chiefs draft history. Because they're very similar to the Ravens, where their inability to fix the D-line is pretty crazy. And I was looking at this prepping for the show. Since they drafted Chris Jones in the second round in 2016, the Chiefs haven't really hit anywhere on their D-line other than, yes, George Karlaftis was a good pick. He's a good, 2B pass rusher. I have nothing wrong with George Karlaftis, but you need more than just him, especially as Chris Jones has gotten a little bit older. I mean, look at all these whiffs on the D-line. Just in the draft, you've got Tano Passignon, you've got Derek Noddy and Breland Speaks. They were trying that year, but those were both horrible picks. You've got Colin Saunders in the third round here. You've got, Mike Dana in the fifth round, sure, as a rotational piece. But they went a couple drafts not really trying anymore because they traded a first-round pick for Frank Clark, which was a horrible trade by this front office, by the way. They did get a second-round pick back, but they went big for Frank Clark while simultaneously letting Justin Houston go in 2019, who went on to have another 4 years of great football after he left Kansas City. So that was a train wreck. And then you got to fast forward all the way to the Trent McDuffie pick. But even then, they've still needed more guys in the D-line. They take FAU, who was a little early in the first round, but he's been hurt. Nobody in 2024. And then Omar Norman Lott, we'll see. Ashton Gelati probably was never going to be an impact player. He's kind of like a supercharged version of Mike Dana. But that's been an issue. And then how they've kind of built this wide receiver core is just kind of weird. A lot of vertical, deep threats, kind of an identity crisis. And those have been kind of the 2 core issues on top of, I think you also have to be critical of kind of the overreaction to a huge mistake. They take Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round because they thought they were a running back away, but instead of taking Jonathan Taylor I'm not a huge DeAndre Swift fan, but him in that Chiefs offense over the last 4 years would probably be a pretty big difference maker. Or even like J.K. Dobbins, they go with the undersized guy that played in that LSU offense with Joe Burrow. And then they just spend the next 4 years acting like running back truly does not matter. So you spend the first round pick on the wrong guy, and then when everybody's telling you need to get a running back, you don't do it. Yeah, you take Pacheco in the 7th round. He's a fun, aggressive player, but not a starting caliber guy. No vision, no consistency. So they've had some pretty core issues that they've struggled to fix. Now, there's obviously the 2022 draft set the table for multiple Super Bowls. Trent McDuffie, the Karlaftis pick was good. Leo Chanel, Josh Williams, Jalen Watson, Isaiah Pacheco. There's and this draft too, on top of that. Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey, 2 second-round picks, huge picks. Trey Smith in the 6th round. Look, these 2 drafts, I don't think the Chiefs hit that dynasty level without those 2 drafts. So they've got that. I also think they totally played the L'Jarius Sneed thing right. So there's a lot to be, positive on with the Chiefs as well. But I think they're B tier. They're like the Lions in recent years, the Ravens, just some frustrations in there. Cowboys, Packers, all these teams that have built really good football teams, but have done some stuff that has set them back a little bit. It's hard to say that about the Chiefs, but you got You got Mahomes and Reed and Spags and all those guys. Okay, Tampa Bay. So Jason Light, I think, is awesome. I had them in the top tier last year. And I don't know if I would change my tune on that. Teddy says no shot the Chiefs are B. But why? This is what can frustrate me about football discourse is like, just because a team winning doesn't mean everybody gets the credit. It's like the Eagles. Like, we don't have to give Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni credit when other aspects of the team are elevating things. So when you have an elite coach, an elite quarterback, and you do enough things right, so you're saying that they should be lower than a B. I don't think it should be lower than a B. I don't. But I don't think they should be higher. I think B is right. Okay. So the Tampa Bay Bucs. I love the way Jason Light builds the Bucs. I do. I think there's been so many slam dunk moves going back to when Tom Brady arrived. And they had a pretty good roster when Brady went there to begin with. But you start in 2020. Look, man, the Bucs don't win a Super Bowl if they don't walk out of that draft with Tristan Wirfs, who was an all-pro tackle out the gate with the 13th pick, and Antoine Winfield, who was an all-pro safety out the gate with the 45th pick. I firmly believe they don't win that Super Bowl without those two players, especially Tristan Wirfs, but Antoine Winfield was sick in those playoffs. Rest of the draft was pretty mid. But then, 2021 happens, and that year was weird, man. This draft, I remember thinking as a Packers fan, after just losing to the Bucs in the NFC Championship, I was so thankful for this draft because I thought Tryon Schrenka was okay. The Kyle Trask pick was so weird. And then he got role players down the board after that. I like Jalen Darden. But this draft was horrible. So that's a blemish. And then even the Logan Hall pick, again, as a Packers fan, I was happy that the Bucs traded out of the first round and took Logan Hall because I thought that was a really bad pick. But they also walk out of that with Luke Gedeke at the end of the second round. Rachaad White, very good pick for a third round. Cade Otton, Zion McCollum is a franchise corner. It's a hell of a draft. 2023, you get Kalijah Cansey, Cody Mox developed really well. Yaya Diaby has turned into a quality starter for a third round pick. That's a great draft. 2024, you end up with Graham Barton, up and down, but still a good pick. Chris Braswell hasn't really done much yet, but Tyke Smith in the third, Bucky Irving in the fourth, Jalen McMillan in the third. Insane draft. And then again this year, Emeka Egbuka is all everybody wants to talk about out of this draft. Benjamin Morrison struggled, but Jacob Parrish has gotten on the field and been one of the better rookie corners in the league. David Walker unfortunately got hurt, but you guys know how excited I was about him. Tez Johnson's played. So they draft extremely well. They just had the one real stinker year in 2021. Free agency, they're very good. They've had to get into cap management hell the last few years because they've had so many good players to retain. This year's free agency hasn't been a slam dunk for them. They make the big play for sorry, my wife's vacuuming upstairs and I don't know if it's coming through on the microphone or not, but it sounds like an alien invasion. But anyway, the Hassan Reddick move hasn't really worked out for them, and I don't know if paying Chris Godwin was the right move for them. They didn't know that they were going to get Egbuka in the draft, but the free agency this year didn't really advance their team, but when you're drafting that well, it's hard to be aggressive. So I still really like the Bucs. You also got to give them credit for finding Baker, for bringing Tom Brady in. My question is, is there any criticism? against the Bucs that would keep them out of the elite tier. You know, the D-line is underwhelmed, but Kalijah Cansey also got hurt this year, and that really sucked. And David Walker, like, man, that's brutal for both those guys to go down. I'm curious if anybody in the chat has an argument to knock the Bucs out of elite tier, because I struggle to find weaknesses in that front office. I would head into every given draft and every offseason with just the utmost confidence in Jason Light in that group. All right, New York Jets. Lisa B in the chat. Sorry for the vacuum. Carry on. You're good. I just wasn't sure if people could hear it or not. I was just reading some of the comments on the Bucs. Seems general agreement. Some thoughts about Todd Bowles, you know, not being a good enough head coach, and the front office maybe not voicing that to ownership, I guess. I could see it as an argument, but New York Jets, very early to tell. How they draft with all those picks they accrued is going to be, I mean, it's going to define this front office with Darren Moogie and this group. No reason to doubt them, but you know, the Armin Membu pick was pretty damn easy to make. I think the rest of their draft is just really up in the air. I like Mason Taylor. He's got a long way to go, but I like him. Azariah Thomas has been very streaky as a rookie, as you kind of would have expected. I do think day 3, you know, Arian Smith was kind of a rough pick. Maui Goa. I liked Malachi Moore. There was nothing wrong with their draft. But I don't think it's enough to put them into early returns look promising quite yet. They do need a little bit of love. They made some really good D-line acquisitions right before the season started. They got Harrison Phillips and Jawan Briggs. Really good little moves. So I also like the Josh Myers edition for what it was. Even if we trashed him earlier, I mean, they lost Elijah Vera Tucker for the year, and no one wanted to pay Josh Myers anything. He can still start for you for like 1 year, $6 million. I'm maybe tempted to say at the back end of early returns look promising, but it's really just one draft and a couple moves. Yeah, they picked up A.D. Mitchell in that trade. Sure. Let's do it. I think they haven't done anything bad yet. And they've done more than the Titans, for example. There's been more trades. Free agent stuff that was like savvy, you know? That's tough. I don't know what to do there. Maybe we should just keep him down here. I don't know. You guys let me know which group you'd put him in. The Fields move was lousy. You know, as hard as I am on Fields, I at least understood that because they were going to just run the crap out of the ball. I really think they were looking at Fields as a bridge option, not as this like, oh, he's going to figure out and be the starter. It's not like money was a problem. Like they had, cap space was not the issue for the Jets. So I don't know necessarily who else would have made sense for them. I think it got a lot of headlines when they signed Justin Fields. My opinion on it was always like, oh, this is the Gardner Minshew contract for the Raiders. Like it wasn't anything that was going to make or break their decision making, in my opinion. So I don't know. I go back and forth on that one. 3 more teams here. The Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers are tough. Let's pull up the Steelers draft history. I think the Steelers obviously do a lot of things right. Just kind of the overall Steelers way. The question is like, does their process set them up to get over the hump or to stay in purgatory, which is always the criticism on them. But I think you got to draft well if you're going to live that way. So let's look at their drafts for the last 5 years. 2021, Najee Harris, probably not worth the 24th pick. Not horrible. Pat Freiermuth at 55. Look, Dan Moore, say whatever you want. 4th round pick on Dan Moore is a very good use of a 4th round pick. Kendrick Green didn't work out. It's a good draft. You know, it's an above average draft. Nothing crazy, but an above average draft. Yeah, the Kenny Pickett pick. And this is just kind of consistent with their like constant swings at mediocrity at quarterback, right? Whether it's Kenny Pickett or Aaron Rodgers this year or Russ last year or Justin Fields, like nothing they really swing for is like even if this was Malik Willis, I think a lot of people would have said that makes more sense. Even if Kenny Pickett was always going to be a better starter, like out the gate, if their process was who was 2022's version of Aaron Rodgers, like was that the Matt Ryan year? Or, you know, I can't go quite that far back in time, but like Derek Carr or whoever was going to be the free agent QB that year. If their process was let's sit and develop Malik Willis in a great culture and, play a veteran for a couple of years, that would have been a better process, I think, to hopefully get more upside at QB. I'm not saying Malik Willis is going to be that guy, but it was always interesting because you knew what Kenny Pickett was. You did. He was my QB1 that year, but it was just like, okay, like he'll help you, keep the ship afloat. And I even think Kenny Pickett was a little bit overhated in his time in Pittsburgh, but he obviously was not the guy. But you get Pickens, you get Calvin Austin. I mean, you definitely make up for it by taking George Pickens second, but then you trade him away. So kind of a wash on that draft. 2023, Broderick Jones hasn't been very good. Joey Porter was a great pick. Keanu Benton's a great pick. Darnell Washington, Nick Herbig. I mean, look at this. Look at this shit, man. That's a great draft. It's a great draft. Even Spencer Anderson plays for them. Even if Broderick Jones hasn't been amazing, he still starts. You get Porter, Benton, Washington, Herbig. Boom. Knock it out the park. Omar Khan. And by the way, Khan took over... He took over in 2022, so he doesn't even get this draft, by the way. So just retcon that. Then you go Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier, Roman Wilson, Peyton Wilson, Mason McCormick. Great draft. Absolute great draft. Then you go to this year, Derek Harmon. Caleb Johnson's been interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if Caleb Johnson turns into a player at some point, but just they haven't really needed him this year with how well Warren and Gainwell have played. Jack Sawyer. I think it's a good draft so far. We'll see. There's a lot still TBD on that. Kind of what you expect for the Steelers, right? A lot more good than bad. I also thought the Jalen Ramsey trade was really good for them. I mean, I would rather have Jalen Ramsey than Minkah Fitzpatrick, period. And then they also get Jonnu Smith in that trade. It's hard to find a lot to be critical of on the Steelers, other than just they're kind of stuck in purgatory and who they are. But, man, those drafts are pretty good under Omar Khan. I don't think free agency's been a nightmare for them. I don't know about the TJ Watt extension was kind of weird. Cap allocation on defense is gross, yeah. They're like an A- to me. It doesn't quite feel right to put them over the Lions, but I think I like them more than the Ravens, honestly. So we'll go right there. All right. Washington Commanders. So I think I'm actually going to be pretty tough on the Commanders here. Obviously, they get Jaden Daniels. And I like the Laramie Tunsil trade. But I'll be honest, I didn't love their first draft. I really didn't. I did like Johnny Newton, but they could have had Cooper DeJean, and they traded down to end up with Sainristil and Ben Sinnott, giving DeJean to the Eagles. That always kind of pissed me off. The third round especially, I just didn't like Brandon Coleman and Luke McCaffrey. McCaffrey's made some catches, but that's largely, these first three picks are pretty good. So I don't want to continue to just bash them for it, but there was a few things they did that draft where I was like, eh. Yeah, Sainristil was good his rookie year, and he's been, pretty streaky this year. He's a nice player. He's not Cooper DeJean, though. Okay, their drafts are better. This is why we look. Everybody relax. Their drafts are better than I think I led into that conversation with, because I like the Connerly pick. Process-wise, it's good. Trey Amos has been good, but then he got hurt. I like Jalen Lane as a developmental piece, and then they get Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt in the 7th. So their drafts have been pretty good. Just a few picks in the middle of 2024 that I just didn't think were great selections. But overall, I would say they've been a good drafting team. And then, I don't think it's worth, obviously if we redrafted right now, you're taking Drake May over Jaden Daniels. But with how good Jaden was as a rookie, it's not worth saying, they screwed up, right? They made a good pick there was 3 great quarterbacks in that draft. They got one of them. Hindsight's 2020. I would have taken Drake May because he was a higher QB for me, but I was also too low on Jaden Daniels. So drafting's been pretty good. Their problem is how they drank their own Kool-Aid, right? And made a few too many aggressive moves, whether it was in the middle of last year going for Marshawn Lattimore or, just doubling down on all these old veterans that played well for them last year. Signing Javon Kinlaw wasn't a great signing. Debo was awesome yesterday. I don't know where that Debo's been all year long. I wouldn't expect him to stay. It's almost too early to tell on Washington, to be honest. I mean, they took over in 2024. It's not enough to say early returns look promising, but I also I think that's right. I don't think they're I don't think they belong in C, D, or F, but they don't belong in B, A. It's just yeah, exactly, Teddy. Their 2 seasons have been completely opposite of each other. So we're going to go too early to tell, and I'm going to put them just at the top of it. I weirdly do kind of trust them to look in the mirror and get through this. But they did put themselves in a tough spot. And then we have the Houston Texans. So, yeah, that's a great call out by Clark. They did revamp that O-line overnight, and they do deserve a lot of credit for that. Houston Texans, very underrated front office. And what's funny is I said Nick Caserio was underrated before DeMeco Ryans ever got there, because I thought that the Brandon, was it Brandon Coley? Coley was his last name. That plus the Lovie Smith years, those were some of the biggest laughing stock years I've ever seen from an NFL team, just in terms of expectations. I mean, you're talking about like a job that truly nobody wanted. Like they were not a real football team, yet Nick Caserio actually made like, and I'm sorry I didn't write them all down. I'd have to go back to kind of like my takes on this from like 3 years ago. But there was just a bunch of little subtle additions. The way that they kind of churned through practice squatters and like just kept giving different other guys opportunity to kind of just see who stuck. And they actually were a more competitive team than was expected of them. And I actually thought Nick Caserio made a bunch of little subtle moves that were not so bad. And remember, I think his first draft pick was Nico Collins, I think. Let's pull up the Texans draft history, because Caserio took over in 2021. And they didn't have draft picks. So all right, not quite. It was Davis Mills, which in hindsight, like, kind of made sense. Like, they needed someone to play. You probably could have just rolled with a veteran. It was kind of a weird pick, but it wasn't the craziest thing. And then they moved up to get, like, Davis Mills almost had to happen by necessity, because it was just like, we need a quarterback, and they preferred to go the younger route. Like, that made sense, right? And they got 2 years out of Davis Mills, and was it Tyrod? Can't even remember what QB they were playing. But Nico Collins, I do remember, like, once they got the QB, it was like, we got to get Nico. And my God, man, Nico Collins in the third round, incredible pick. And then you go to 2022, and Kenyon Green was a bad pick. And John Mechie didn't work out. You know, I think once he got cancer, things just kind of fell out of place there. But Jalen Petrie has turned into an all-pro nickel. And Derek Stingley was not the obvious pick at number 3. I think myself and a lot of people would have said Evan Neal or Kayvon Thibodeau for you at number 3. Like, I'll be fully honest. Like, if I was in that position, I probably would have fucked it up. And they went with Derek Stingley. And for a year, it was looking like Sauce Gardner was going to be a much better player. But I think at this point in time, you'd rather have Derek Stingley than Sauce. And that was DeMeco Ryans' first pick. So you walk out of that, yeah, a couple busts, but slam dunks on Stingley and Jalen Petrie. And then this happens. You change the fate of your organization overnight. This was DeMeco Ryans' first year. So Caserio made that pick without DeMeco Ryans. But anyway, you come in and you change the fate of your organization overnight. You do the aggressive move up, you give up your future first round pick, you do the whole thing, and it couldn't have worked out any better for you. It couldn't have. You get the best QB out of that draft, and you get Will Anderson. I mean, it doesn't even matter what happens after that. Unfortunately, the Juice Scruggs pick was a major reach for me, and he sucks. But you get Tank Dell in the third round. Jarrett Patterson's starting for them. Xavier Hutchinson's been a player. It's a great draft. 2024. You give... They traded down to recoup some picks because they went after Stephon Diggs, which actually was a really good move, by the way. He just got hurt. But Kamari Lassiter, great pick. Kalen Bullock, great pick in the third round. Not the best overall draft, but you get some key contributors there. Blake Fisher's been a bust. Cade Stover's roadblocked. But considering you don't have a first-round pick, you still walk out of it... Well, considering you traded down from the first round, you still walk out with a quality number 2 corner and a quality starting safety. That's very good. Those are key pieces of their defense. And then this year, I actually really like their draft. Again, they traded down. They get Jaden Higgins. great pick. Ariante Ursary has been a great pick for the 48th pick. He's been a very solid rookie with a lot of potential. Jalen Knowles, awesome. Woody Marks is awesome. Don't know why they drafted Graham Mertz. That was a weird one. But look, man, the Texans have done a great job other than the O-line stuff. And they dug themselves in a hole by like missing on Blake Fisher, missing on Juice Scruggs. Like, you got to ding them for that, right? Those are second round picks that were complete failures. You trade away Laramie Tunsil. On top of that, your free agent signings don't work out. They can't be too high. They can't be an A-tier front office because of the O-line stuff. But I guess I can't put them back down here once I... Anyway. The last point I want to make on them is they still have a lot of work to do on the offensive line, but I think Ursary's been a good sign. Ed Ingram was a sneaky little pickup. Trent Brown has been able to get out there, and their offensive line is stabilized. Even picking up Jake Andrews off of waivers, like they haven't just sat around and done nothing. Like, the O-line is better than it was in the first month. Like, they're getting there. They're going to have to come through the woods with a good O-line at some point because they're not there yet. But I'm actually a big fan of the Texans front office. Probably more than you would think. I can't go A because of the O-line stuff. I think I'm going to put them... It's funny, like, separating the Steelers and Ravens because you almost just assimilate those two guys together. But I'm actually going to put them ahead of the Ravens, who've just don't quite have the slam dunks, I think, that the Texans have had. I mean, the Texans can stand tall. And I know people are down on Stroud right now. You'll get over it. I think that they can stand on that and be very proud of it. King Arthur says, please put more teams in A, but I'm not going to force it if I don't believe it. I mean, I think there's legitimate criticisms on all these teams in B. Lions haven't done shit for 2 years. Steelers can't get a quarterback. Texans can't get an O-line. Ravens, Chiefs can't get a pass rusher. Cowboys have Jerry Jones. Brian Gutekunst shoots himself in the foot once a month. You know, Panthers are getting there. Broncos traded for Russell Wilson, you know. Like, all these teams, they're in B for a reason. I know it seems weird to have the Chargers in their own tier, but I don't know. I think it makes sense. Even if it's not aesthetically pleasing. So this is the list. Chat, 3 hours in, we did it. I think we built the perfect NFL front office tier maker ranking. And I'm glad we spent so much time on this because I get this question a lot. When the deep dives come around, everyone's like, why don't you rank front offices? And I'm like, well, this is already kind of a 2.5 hour conversation about what the front office has done. It's just kind of weird for those that watch the deep dives to know like where you're supposed to place the front office conversation. Anyway, it's good to have this to look back on. I do have a couple super chats here, I think, before we get out of here. So George says, I think it's a little strange to have spent all that time debating C, D for the Browns and now have them bottom 3. Any revisiting? Yeah, I'll put them at the top. I'll put them at the top of D for some of the good pieces they've acquired to build that defense up. I still like Andrew Berry more than Kwesi at the end of the day. So, sure. I could see that. And then Super Pony, if the Colts fire Ballard, would they be wrong to also fire Shane Steichen? I'm going to stop you there. Yes. Yes. You don't fire Shane Steichen. The dude's incredible. I just think we got to be able to We got to be able to assess where the problems are and where they aren't. And Shane Steichen is the furthest thing from the problem in Indianapolis. The furthest thing from the problem. All right. Amazing stream, guys. Really, really fun. I will offer a $20 Venmo to the first person that can, once this stream finishes, I will offer a $20 Venmo to the first person that can put timestamps in for all of these teams. I got you. I'm sorry if you're not first and you waste your time doing that, but it's a race for $20. Thank you everybody for your super chats and your amazing commentary and for helping me build out a great list here. But I'm gonna go ahead and hit the road and enjoy my weekend. This was fantastic. I hope you guys enjoyed. And just cheers. Love you guys.